Welcome everyone to another episode of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad, and alongside me is my brother Tanner. How's it hanging, dude?
It's good. It's good. I've been relaxing, enjoying a lot of sports.
We have a lot to get into today, folks.
Yes, a lot.
I'm gonna jump in off the bat. Well, I'm gonna address a PSG rumor. Then we're gonna at the NBA playoffs, mostly Tanner because he's a basketball guy. I'm gonna hit on the NHL playoffs. Tanner actually caught a couple of those games too. He's becoming a bigger and bigger hockey fan, and it's best time of the year in sports, like I've been saying, because the last segment is the NFL draft, and we get to recap the first round. And guess what? Even though you see a Cowboy star, if you're watching on YouTube, I can tell you we're not going to be homers on the Cowboys pick. But let
Hey,
me jump into
speak
this.
for yourself. You know.
It was a joke. It was a joke. It's okay. It's okay. But PSG. So I don't know if you saw it, Tanner, but Messi, arguably the GOAT, right up there with Ronaldo, was suspended because of an unauthorized trip to, I think it was Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
The report came out today. I can't think of the author's name, but came out today. I think it was ESPN, because I got it on Bleacher Report. And Messi's family had already told PSG that he was going to go, and PSG hasn't suspended somebody in a really long time, and they decided to suspend Messi, the guy that they may or may not be bringing back next season. And this was kind of the last straw. Now Messi's not coming back. So today essentially stamped that Messi is no longer going to come back to PSG next year. And there goes the GOAT. He did really well this year. You can't say he wasn't a great addition to the team. He's going to go. Then that makes me think of Mbappe. What is Mbappe going to do? And if you're watching again, I'm wearing a PSG jersey to prove my fandom here, because I'm not going to go away even if Mbappe and he's already gone, and Neymar. We'll see what happens with Neymar because the injury history does have a contract, but up in the air. And all I'm saying is I can't wait to see what happens and who's starting on PSG next season. What do you think about Messi definitely leaving, Tanner?
I think it's kind of interesting because I'm a Manchester United fan, so naturally I will compare it to when Ronaldo left and then inevitably came back to United recently, and it kind of to me looks like the same situation. He wanted to go play with PSG, which is a really famous club, and they get a lot of famous transfers. And I mean, you can't say that they've had the most success that they could have given the roster that they've put together, right? Neymar, like you said, Mbappe and Messi, those three should just be scoring goals left and right, but they kind of
Yeah,
have.
and they don't.
They kind of haven't though, right?
And in the big moments they haven't. I mean, of course, can't say anything about Mbappe, but Neymar's never been there
Yeah.
in the big moments in the Champions League. And my thing is, I get it. You want to win, the French league, but I don't know. I need to see what's going on in Champions League, right? Like
Right.
that's why I have the patch on the jersey, right? Like I want to see what's going on in Champions League, and they haven't been able to deliver. Me as a fan, they haven't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really frustrating, just from like you're saying from a fan's perspective, because they get so close every single year. And it's not that they're not good players. Like France won the World Cup very recently.
I know.
So,
Mbappe already has a World Cup.
yeah, and Mbappe was a major part of that, and they made it to the finals in this past one. So
Yep.
it's not that they're not good players. I just don't know what it is when they get to that level of the Champions League. You know,
Yeah.
I personally don't know.
It kind of goes away. But hopefully, hopefully the PSG comes back next season and vengeance. I would like to see it.
It's
We've got
isn't
really,
is
really good young talent.
yeah isn't Messi, isn't he planning to go back to Barcelona to end his career?
That's that's what I read, but I've
Yeah.
also read that Miami, I want to say, in
No
the
way.
United States is making like a huge push because I think
Really?
David Beckham is actually the owner of that, and I've read multiple reports that he was talking to Messi to try to get him to come over. Now, Messi is the number two most paid player of 2023 behind Ronaldo. Right behind him is Mbappe. So I don't know if you're going to get that big of a cut.
Yeah.
For those of you who aren't soccer fans, the MLS is nowhere near what PSG can spend. I think PSG's transfer budget is probably more than the entire league in the MLS. No lie there.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
So yeah, you're going to see what's going to happen. It could be a whole new squad next year. And my thing is, this may be my last chance to say it, but Mbappe, wherever he goes, I'm going to root for him. I'm not saying I'm going to root for the team, but I'm saying if PSG isn't there and whatever team Mbappe's on, I'm going to be going for in the Champions League, because it's one of those things where you want him to leaves the Bundesliga, then goes and everyone's like, well, I don't know if he's going to compete in the English Premier League. And it's like, well, he got the most goals in a single season. So,
Yeah.
I hope that kind of similar thing for Mbappe, because all Mbappe needs, honestly, is a Champions League. And he pretty much, like, he already has a World Cup. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure he's already won Player of the Year, if I'm mistaken. And, like, you know what I mean? Champions League, he needs it. So we'll see what happens. But jumping from soccer, yeah, the NBA playoffs, and Tanner is gonna take us away on the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what we talked about last time. I really don't remember, but the NBA works every single day, and they're gonna have a game here in like 18 minutes. But we're gonna start with the Nuggets and the Suns is the first series in the second round. And I talked to you, I think this past weekend, and I asked you, who do you think was gonna win this series, and who did you have?
I had Phoenix.
You had Phoenix. See, I picked the Nuggets, and they're up 2-0 right now. I'm looking pretty smart right
You
now.
look good. You look smart, and I would not have thought. Saying you've got KD and you've got Book.
Yeah.
They are going to steal a game for you. That is automatically 2 games in a series. Now they're down 2-0, and the Nuggets look dominant,
They
dude.
they look really good.
I didn't see it coming. I definitely didn't see it coming.
The thing about the Nuggets is like what I've been seeing just throughout the playoffs is like when I watch their games, it's almost like it's boring because it's like, oh, the Nuggets are just gonna win the game, go on a run, and have a good game to finish it out, right? And it like I said, it's almost boring to watch them because you know what's gonna happen, and so that's kind of what my thought process picking the Nuggets. And if like I said, if Jamal Murray's hitting, that whole team's hitting. Jokic is gonna be fine. We know that, you know. But Phoenix,
He's gonna eat.
they got to put up a lot of points if they want to win these next couple games. But moving on,
Yep, and I'm eating my words down 2-0, but we'll see what happens. I'm not gonna go back. I'm not that kind of sports fan. So actually, no, I'm not gonna lie. As a Lakers fan, I want the Nuggets to win because I think the Lakers match up very well with the Nuggets. That's if we get past Golden State. You'll hit on that later.
well, speak of the devil, that's the next one we're going to talk about. Golden State and LA, the Lakers, the storied franchise, the new storied franchise. They go at it. What do you The Lakers are up 1-0. Did you expect that coming in the first game?
I think that I think Anthony Davis is another one of those players. I
Yeah.
think Anthony Davis is going to steal one game for you. I think that you have stars, and I think the stars are all going to take a game. You know what I mean? I think the stars are going to take a game. That's why when you get a big three and they're actually working together, it's scary. You know what I mean? Because that's three
Yeah.
games in a series, right? But did I, as a Lakers fan, did I see it coming against a Golden State team that beat, honestly, a Sacramento team that looked unbeatable?
Right.
They looked unbeatable. I know the series went 7, but realistically, at times that team looked unbeatable. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, is Sacramento going to make a run? Is this going to be the biggest turnaround season in NBA? And Golden State shut them out.
Hmm.
And Golden State did what Golden State did, and they lean on Curry.
Yeah.
And when Curry's not going to steal you one, Curry's going to steal you two. Curry's one of the only people that can steal you two. Back when Braun was going, he was going to take you two. Honestly, Braun was probably going to take you 3. but you got Curry taking 2. And the thing is, like, Anthony Davis, it was all Anthony Davis. I don't remember the stat line, but he was the last player to do it for the Lakers was Shaq. I think it was points and rebounds, and blocks, the same. But like I said, I don't remember the stat line. He's going to take you one game. That's the one game he took. Right now, the Lakers got an advantage. It was Golden State, LA, Golden State, LA. So it's almost like
Yeah.
they have home court advantage. I was talking to Logan earlier, we need to get on this podcast because that's a heck of a basketball guru.
Uh-huh.
But he was saying he was the one telling me about everything. Like, oh man, I think that the Lakers are a really good defensive team, and they match up really well against teams that are extremely offensive. Golden State.
Yeah, that's hard.
So Do I think the series is going to be over in 4? No,
No.
no, I don't. I think that series goes 6 or 7, and I have the Lakers taking them. And then Denver next series, and I'm getting ahead of myself. I have the Lakers taking Denver in 6 or 7 too. The Suns, I don't know, because I've I've seen KD too many times in the playoffs. I've seen Book too many times in the playoffs, especially in those deep runs. They turn on another level, and the Lakers right now only have like they're getting contributions from everywhere.
Hmm.
Logan was telling me earlier that 7 of their guys have like scoring is all very very close within their team. So it's like they're getting it from everywhere. Like
Yeah.
2 coming off the bench, you know what I mean? And LeBron, like, look, I love LeBron. I've been a LeBron fan since he came in from high school and went to Cleveland and somehow got Cleveland there. You know what I mean? Right? And then he couldn't bring it home and then eventually brought it back and did. LeBron's absolutely top 1, top 2 player in the game. LeBron is 40 years old.
Yeah, he's getting up
And
there.
LeBron's not going to go out and have a 40-point game like he did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anthony Davis is that guy. But the Lakers aren't, or they don't rely on that anymore. Like LeBron, if you watch the Lakers, he's almost like a facilitator. You know what I mean? Like him and D'Angelo Russell are a facilitator, but now D'Lo can shoot from 3.
He's been
So
performing very well in these playoffs. D'Angelo
yeah,
Russell
yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? So I like the chances. I really really glad we stole one in Golden State.
is important.
I hope we can take another one in Golden State. I wouldn't be surprised though if Golden State came back and won it. But like I said, I got the Lakers in 6 or 7.
I think I think with the series, it's just we saw it with Golden State against Sacramento in that last game. I think everybody knew who was going to win that game going into that game 7, Golden State and Sacramento. I mean, Curry put up 50, the most points in a game 7 in the history of the NBA, which is absolutely absurd. And I whenever I think of this Lakers Golden State series, I think back to the championship that Curry basically won by himself very recently with Golden State. I mean, he dragged them through the playoffs, and now he's got Clay's back. He hasn't been performing the best, but I mean, the team is all still there, right? If Jordan Poole can start hitting at least a little bit, I think this team is going to go on another run. But I have Golden State in this series, but I do think it goes to 6 or 7, and
Yeah,
I just think they're not going to go out quietly. And the Lakers, as good of a team as they have been, it's just hard to pick against Golden State. They're so good. They're so good. But is that all you want to hit on for that series?
I think I talked everybody's ear off about the Lakers, and next podcast we'll see where we're standing.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, next series we go back to the East, and the Heat and the Knicks, which is so far tied up 1-1, and Jimmy Butler, you know, he was out the second game, and the Knicks took it, and of course, they took the first game the Heat did with Jimmy Butler, and I don't remember what the injury was, but it was something, but it
It was
wasn't
an
crazy
ankle.
serious. It wasn't like he was
Yeah,
not
it
being
was
able
it
to
was an
play.
ankle.
Hmm.
I texted you. I texted you right
Yeah,
right when it happened too, and then you texted me back. We're like, he's up. We're good. That was he's gonna steal you one too. You know what I mean? Clearly, there's the theme there. But I mean, watch the last game of the last series with Jimmy Butler, and
my goodness.
my goodness. And then I watched the first game of this series with the Knicks and Jimmy Butler. My,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
He is when he's hitting like that. I don't know. Personally, I got the Heat in this one, and I think this one goes. I think this one goes 7. I got the Heat in 7 in this one, but I'll let you take away this series.
I think coming into the series, I really thought that New York had a higher floor when it comes to like depth on their team, right? Because I saw them play against Cleveland, and they just every single player was doing something. Like they were always contributing to what was happening on the court. And so, coming into the series, I'm like, okay, I think the Knicks take it in 6, let's say, because you can't brush off the fact that the Heat are an 8 seed, right? There's a reason they're seeded this low. Yes, they took out the Milwaukee Bucks, the 1 seed, but I don't know. That game 1, I think it changed my opinion because I think it was like 5 minutes left when Jimmy went down and he got that injury. And I don't think he touched the ball for the rest of the game. Maybe once, I'm not sure. He shot some free throws at some point, but his team just went on a run to finish the game. with 5 minutes left. And if that doesn't scream to you the depth of this team, then I don't know what does. If Jimmy Butler is on the court, I think they're going to win the series. If he continues to be out, I don't think they win the series. But assuming he comes back, because I don't think it's a crazy big injury, I think I think the Heat win this in, let's say, 7.
Yeah. I mean, it it's one of those really cool things when you're watching sports.
Yeah.
Right? Just to hit on your point about the depth. I look at that as Jimmy Butler being the ultimate leader, and
Right.
their leader went
Of course.
down, and they're gonna pick him back up and finish it out. Because imagine went the other way after what Jimmy did. I mean, you saw it. The iconic picture of Jimmy Butler after he got eliminated, just on the court, just exhausted. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I can't imagine how much freaking therapy that guy does for his body, dude. Like I can't imagine. Like he's got to do like compression therapy, red light therapy. He's got to jump in the cold tub. He's got to get in the sauna. Like that dude, because his body goes through hell. And like I said, I completely agree with you. Heat in 7.
Yeah. But going on to the last series we have is the 76ers and the Celtics. What do you have for this one? 76ers are up 1, by the way.
Sixers are up 1. Shout out to Embiid for taking down the MVP. Good job there, man. That was a really cool video to see with the team reaction. Another leader, team jumping behind their leader. That was really cool. Honestly, I'm gonna go Celtics just because I don't know. I have a feeling that Tatum's gonna have a special series. I have a feeling that Tatum's gonna have a special series, and I don't feel fair picking Philadelphia when I know they're 1 up. So I'm gonna go Boston in 7. And these teams know each other. These teams have played each other a lot in the playoffs, a lot for the last years. And there's usually been injuries. Now there's not a whole lot of injuries, so we're gonna see. Well, not a whole lot of injuries. Embiid is now going, but we'll see, man. We'll see. I got Boston in 7 though.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, like you said, Embiid won the MVP, right? And he's just the heartbeat of that team. So when he's playing, I think they're almost unstoppable. It's like the point I was talking about earlier with the Nuggets, how they're almost boring to watch because you know they're going to
Yep.
win. This is the team that had the only sweep in this playoffs in the first round, and they swept the Nets. And I don't know. I think I have to take the 76ers. I think it's going to go the distance. I think like all of these series are because it's hard to pick against the Celtics, but it's hard. It's hard to pick against Joel Embiid, and when Harden is playing as well as he has been, and he's also being a leader on that team, I think that team is very, very good. So I'm gonna go 76ers in 6. Yeah. So
Now we're all done with the NBA. Now jump into the NHL playoffs here. Starting in the West, last round we had the Avalanche losing. Hey there, Odin, making an appearance on the podcast. We had the Avalanche, the Stanley Cup champions last season, Avalanche, get eliminated by the first ever time they've made it to the playoffs because they're an expansion team. But the Seattle Kraken, well, I got that wrong. I know for a fact I picked Colorado. I think I picked them in 4, if I'm not mistaken. So I got that one wrong. Once again, I admit when I'm wrong. Um, Seattle dominated them.
yeah.
I mean, they played better than them. The Avalanche had some unfortunate suspensions. Like I said, injuries. They were riddled with injuries. So it doesn't surprise me that they went out that, but at the same time, it kind of does. You know what I mean? It's the first ever time the Kraken makes the playoffs, but when you have the Kraken, you have a bunch of guys that look at themselves as, because this came out with Vegas the other year. When you get drafted to an expansion team, you're a castaway. You're not being protected on your team. Literally, when there's an expansion draft in the NHL, you have a certain number of players you protect. These players were not protected, and a lot of these players were drafted by them, or coming to the NHL draft, they were drafted by them. So you have first ever barn playing in Seattle. It's electric there. You know what I mean? And going, and we're gonna see what's gonna happen. Tanner, do you want to hit on anything with the Avalanche and the Kraken?
I think I watched a bit of that series just because I like this. I like the Kraken. I think they're a fun team to watch. And like you were telling me when this series started, that's the reigning champs Avalanche right there. And it's like, okay, well, Seattle's kind of bringing it to them right now, and that's it's
Oh
fun to
yeah.
root for the underdog. And I think that's why a lot of people are one getting behind this, and two why they're performing so well, right? Because they have almost like that chip on their shoulder. They're going up against these guys who have proven it, who have won the cup before, and they're like, man, these guys are nothing. You know what I mean? And they have that chip on their shoulder, and I think it just brings that next level of motivation for them. Whereas the Avalanche, they won it already. They've already been through that, and they're like, okay, well, I don't think there's as big of a like a want or a desire to go back to it. Obviously in sports you're always going to have that drive, but comparing it to someone who's never won the cup and who's I think it's their first time in the playoffs, right? And
Yep.
there's a special something there, I think.
Yeah, it's like Vegas. Vegas went on a run. I think it might have been their first season or second season in the league. They took out the Sharks. No surprise there. Everybody takes out the Sharks in the playoffs. Um, I'm a Sharks fan, so I can say that. But I mean, Seattle just steamrolled them. Then you jump to the next series. Dallas took Minnesota. I think I picked that one wrong too. Pretty sure Tanner picked that one right, but Dallas won that series in 6 games. Pretty sure you actually said Dallas in 6, if I'm not mistaken, or
8.
7. I know it was 6 or 7. So good job there, Tanner. Minnesota, I thought had a lot of firepower. They did, but their firepower just didn't show up in the later part of the series. And Dallas's firepower did, even with Joe Pavelski, their leader, going down. Dallas still won. Ben stepped up, played physical hockey. Tyler Seguin stepped up and got in some nice couple tips. Tanner, I know you watched that Dallas series. What do you think about your old Stars there?
I think it was a fun series because it was almost, and that was kind of like my first series that I was watching in the NHL. So I was kind of learning a lot and just like understanding what was happening. But it almost seemed like the Wild should have won a lot more than they actually did. Like they should have scored a lot more goals than what they were actually going in. And
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it was a fun series, but I think the Wild kind of just choked it a little bit. And the Stars did they just
Yeah,
took advantage of that. And I don't know. That's pretty much all I have on that.
Stars. The Stars had a lot more depth than the Wild did, and I thought that the Wild were a little bit deeper, and they weren't. And their star player Kaprizov was clearly playing through something, so that definitely had something to do with it. And when you have Dallas, I mean Dallas, if you really think about it, they got Hintz, they got Robertson, they got Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn, Joe Pavelski. So depth wise, I'm kind of back that statement because you look at Dallas, and when all of those guys are performing really hard to beat that team because guess what? They also bring you down to their level and they drag you down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you go to the Dallas won. They took out the Wild. Then the Kraken won. They took out the Avalanche. Then now they're playing in this series,
Hmm.
and Dallas is losing that series 1-0. Joe Pavelski comes back and gets 4 goals in his first game. First off, respect Captain America. Been watching you since you were literally a shark, and so awesome to see him come back from that concussion and just get 4 goals in what Joe Pavelski usually does, his typical fashion. But Seattle, once again, brought like they don't the hockey they play bring you down. It is systematic hockey. It's simple, and they capitalize on their opponent's mistakes, and they're so good because you can tell their team so in sync because just the goals that it was 4-4. If you have one player scoring 4 goals in an NHL game and you lose, I mean, it's hard to lose a game like that, especially
Yeah.
when Pav's that hot and he's doing that. It's really hard to lose a game like that. And you were saying last series you think Minnesota shouldn't have lost a couple games. Dallas shouldn't have lost that game.
Hmm.
Dallas did, and the Kraken took him out in overtime. I love to see that Pavelski's back. What I'm bringing this back to is I'm not going to pick it against Dallas again. I know Seattle's up 1-0 in the series, but I'm going to take Dallas in 6 in this series because I think the Stars are going to lean on their depth, and I think they're going to take out the Kraken. I know there's a run there, but man, it's going to be hard to beat that Dallas team. I know they did it once; they only got to do it 3 more times, but we'll see what happens. Who do you think in that series, Tanner, with the Stars and the Kraken?
I think just touching on game one first, like just watching it as a fan, it was really interesting because there were like so many goals in like a 4 minute interval just in the first period alone. The first period was 4-2, and then for the entirety of the second period it was 0-0, and then the third period comes up and then Dallas just brings the house. And I can't tell you how many times I saw Dallas just on Seattle's side of the ice. I mean, they were putting shots on net. They were like, all
Yeah.
right, we got to get to the net. We have to score. And like you said, Joe Pavelski, 4 goals. I mean, absolutely insane. I didn't realize um, how big of a deal like the redirects were with like with players when they're close to the net. I was like, okay, that's something I wouldn't have considered, but is like weirdly extremely technical and looks really hard to do. And he just like
And
amazingly does it.
he's arguably the best in the NHL at it.
Yeah.
He makes it look very, very easy. I played hockey for 20 plus years. It is not the easiest thing in the world, but I can also tell you it's not the hardest thing in the world. Now, let me preface: I'm a beer league warrior here. You know, at least I played in A league, but I'm nowhere near any of these guys. Not saying I am, and I'm not taking slap shots at 109 miles an hour, somehow finding it in the air
That's
and
insane.
tipping it. I'm talking about when it's on the ice, dude. When it's on the ice, I got you all day. But when it goes in the air, that's like, that's baseball. That's like lower than baseball batting average right there. That's like 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 times. You know what I mean? You got Pavelski hitting it consistently 9 out of 10 times in practice. And, I think he got 2 tip ins in that game, if not more. Like, you nailed it from a fan's perspective that somebody that's not like a veteran, a veteran fan of the NHL, just coming into the sport, you're getting into it at the best time. It's so freaking hard, dude. And the fact that they're able to he's able to do it that easy is pretty incredible.
It just seems like I don't know. He just looked like he just wanted it so bad, and he got 4 goals. And when he got the fourth one, I was like, "Are you kidding me? He got another one?" And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
It goes into overtime. They finish out the third period great. They have like another chance to put it in the net, and they miss it with like a minute left, which was kind of disheartening. But they go into the overtime, and I don't know. They didn't lose their fire from the third period, but it just kind of went away a little bit. And an interesting stat I saw throughout that game was apparently Seattle is like one of the best teams when all the players are on the ice at scoring goals.
5-on-5 regulation are the best team.
Yeah, and it's like wow, okay, well this team is dangerous normally, and I, in the power plays they just didn't look that good, and it was kind of it worked for their stat, but it's a weird stat to have. And I was just kind of amazed because Dallas got some pretty good chances in that overtime, and they just couldn't convert. But I don't know. I think that the Stars are going to take it. Let's say let's say 7. Let's say 7. Why not? These series are going to distance. Let's say 7.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that one. So jumping down to the next series, we got Vegas who played the Jets. I'm going to be very quick with this one. Vegas dominated; it wasn't even close.
Yeah.
Jack Eichel, welcome to the playoffs, buddy. Stoked you're here, man. That's another guy. That's another Team USA guy. Usually, Jack Eichel's not in the playoffs. Like I said, it's his first time, and he showed up. He's got some goals, got some assists. His plus minus numbers are looking solid, and they steamrolled the Jets. No surprise there, honestly. Jumping to the next one, Edmonton and LA. Great series. At times, it looked like LA was going to run away with the games, but you have the best players in the world with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and I think Leon Draisaitl is number 2 now in average points per game in the playoffs, and the only one he's behind is Wayne Gretzky, who also was an Oiler for a very long time, and no one's ever going to touch his numbers, his total point numbers. Ovechkin could beat Gretzky's most goals, but if you haven't watched hockey and this year Connor McDavid got I think he got around 150 points in the regular season. 100. That's what Gretzky used to do, and he did that a lot. He did that consistently. Don't believe me? Just Google it, right? But said Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl show up when they need to, and their goaltending it looks bad at times, but their goaltending is looking solid too right now. So it's going to be a great series with Vegas and the Oilers. It's actually the series that I am most excited for because, like I said, you've got Connor McDavid. For me, it's a win-win situation because you have Vegas, who if they advance, you've got Jack Eichel going to the next round. Awesome, I love Jack Eichel. You got the Oilers going next round. You got the two most exciting, arguably the two most exciting players in the world. And by the way, they're on the same team. You know what I mean? And you got them. So that one's a really hard series, but I'm gonna take Oilers, and I'm gonna take the Oilers in 7. I'm gonna take the Oilers in 7 in that one. Do you have a pick, Tanner, for Edmonton and Vegas? Who's gonna win that series?
Um, I didn't really watch these teams very much, but I think your judgment is pretty good here, and let's go Oilers, but I'm gonna say in 6.
There you go. Shot in the dark. That's what I like to hear. We've got the now jumping over to the East. We have the wow, folks. Sorry, I just choked a little bit. The Boston Bruins. Goodness, the best regular season ever, and they lose. Literally a couple of years ago, it happened to Tampa. They got the best regular season ever, but they got swept in the first round. Watched Brad Marchand's interview, the rat. I watched Brad Marchand's interview, and it's simple. He said it shouldn't have got past Game 5. When it got past Game 5, we gave up chances in Game 6 and Game 7, but it shouldn't have got past Game 5. And I completely agree with him. You is a Boston team. They let Florida always stay around, always squeak in, and Florida's not going to go away easy. That's a team that has a lot of fight in him. Matthew Tkachuk, his brother Brady is on Ottawa. Matthew Tkachuk is a great player. Came in a trade last year with Huberdeau and gosh, his name just went away. Huberdeau and Tkachuk, and Huberdeau had like 100 plus points last season, dropped down to like less than 50 this season. Actually has a stat for the biggest point drop off, so that's not a good stat to have with Huberdeau. But then you have the other side of the trade, who's incredible on the ice. He is also somewhat of a rat. He's a tough guy, but he can also score. You don't have that a lot in the NHL. And Florida beat the freaking Boston Bruins, who, like I said, had the best regular season in NHL history. Hell of a series. I don't think they're going to get past the Maple Leafs, even though they're up 1-0 on that series next. But what a series from Florida. Good job. Tanner, you have anything to say on that one?
Um, I just I watched the final game of that series, and it was I go back to my point before. I feel like it's clear that the Panthers wanted it more, man. I
Yeah.
they took them out, and it was just like, oh, what is Boston even doing, right? At that point, like, I don't. How do you even let it get that far?
is a Let me just say I'm glad I'm not a Boston fan, because if I was a Boston fan, I'd be pretty sick. That team that you had, the depth that you had, Bergeron's going to be gone. Longtime captain Bergie, he's going to be gone. Had a hell of a run. That's what I think. I don't know if they're going to bring back Bergeron for one more season or not afterwards, but man, for them to go down like that, it hurts. It hurts fans to see, because it was tough, man. I thought that team was going to go a long way. I had them in the finals. I had literally had them in the finals. I'm not going to say that I had them winning or not, but I had them in the finals, and they got bounced first round. Then the Maple Leafs break the 19-year curse of not getting out of the first round, and they take out the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. The Maple Leafs just played better hockey than the Lightning did. The Lightning looked tired at times, and the Maple Leafs scored when they needed to, and they scored at the end of games. And typically, scoring at the end of games, you're probably going to win the game. Sometimes, if you're Florida, it can go the other way. If you're the Kraken, it can go the other way. But you got the Maple Leafs, who finally got out of the first round in 19 years. I know Maple Leafs fans are stoked. That team's good. You've got Mitchie Marner, you've got Austin Matthews, you've got John Tavares, who are all hitting right now on all cylinders. So it's going to be a fun series with Florida. But Florida is actually up 1-0 in that series. I gave it away that I have Toronto winning that series, but Florida's not going to go away, man. And I still think Toronto's going to, get out. I think they're going to dominate at some point in this series, but I think also Florida's going to drag them down. And for Toronto to win, they cannot let Florida drag them down to that level, because Toronto has too much speed and way too much hands to be playing slow hockey. They need to go on the rush. They need to go on right out of the. They need to haul ass out of the breakout. They need to give the puck to Austin Matthews up top, and they put Mitchie Marner right in front of the net, or vice versa. They both do it all. So I think the Maple Leafs are going to take that series. Tanner, who do you have winning in the Maple Leafs and the Panthers?
You know, I think it's fun because the Panthers just beat a historic team in the Boston Bruins, and I think they're gonna do it again. Let's say the Panthers in 7. All right.
That's that's what we like to hear. We're now jumping to Carolina and the Islanders. That series arguably was one of the most boring series in the first round. Carolina just was a better hockey team. It's that simple. Then you had the Devils and the Rangers, probably one of number two best series that I think, maybe even number one. I don't know. It's hard. There were so many good first round games, but the Devils come back from the dead and win three straight and take out the Rangers. I had a Rangers jersey on. Okay. Yes, I picked the Rangers. Okay. This Devils team is exciting because they're young and they're so fast. And you've got Jack Hughes, who 99 points this season. That's a lot, especially for that young of a player. You've got Nico Heischer there. You've got so many young, talented players on that team. And the fact that they took out a Rangers team that brought over Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, you already had Panarin. Like I did not think Igor Shesterkin is their goalie. Like that's a really, really good team. For them to lose in the first round, scary team. And the Devils, I thought they were out. Thought there was no way they were going to win. But I think the Rangers did the exact same thing that the Bruins did, and they let them claw back into those series. They let them take one game. It's all good. We'll get them next time. We didn't get them next time. It's all good. Game 7, they didn't get them. The Rangers. The Rangers are going home. Watch any of the Rangers and Devil series, Tanner?
I watched the game 7 and I was like, okay, I think the Devils won like 4-0, and I was like, okay, so I know who's gonna win this game, and I like them. I think they look really good.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the Devils absolutely take out the Hurricanes. That game hasn't been played yet. I'm gonna go keep the same trend going. I'm gonna go Devils in 7. I'm gonna go Devils in 7. You got Devils or the Hurricanes, Tanner?
I'll take the Devils. I'll do it in 6. I'll take them in 6.
Okay. Okay. All right. That is it for NHL playoffs and picks. Now to recap the NFL draft first round. We're just gonna start picks from pick 1, and we're gonna go all the way through the picks. So first overall pick, we had the Carolina Panthers. They took quarterback Bryce Young from Alabama. Slam dunk, right? I said it before the draft even started. It's number 1 prospect in the draft, and he went number 1. Did you find that a surprise at all, Tanner?
No, not really. I thought he was the best prospect, and I mean, dude's just a walking highlight show when he was at Alabama. Like, why would you not draft him? He's hopefully a future franchise quarterback, and I think they got a good one.
Exactly. Then number 2, you had the Houston Texans. They took quarterback, like I said, C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. I think it was the best pick they could have taken there, number 2 prospect quarterback wise. So I think it was a good pick. I think the Texans are starting to go, and the Texans trade back into the first round to number 3. It's the edge Will Anderson or linebacker out of Alabama. A lot of experts gave this pick, a bad rating. I completely disagree. I think that you got the best defensive player in the draft, either him or I'm not even going to give away who got the second best defensive player in the draft, or maybe the first. But it's hard to pass up on that guy, right? It's hard to pass up on a Will Anderson. What a trade for a defensive player,
Yeah.
and they're not playing around. It's just that simple. They're not playing around. They know that guy is a franchise edge rusher, and they now have their franchise quarterback. So go Texans. You know what I mean?
Go Texans. I mean, when it happened, I was like,
In
what? They're coming back in?
in just the draft, by the way, in just the draft, not the actual season, but just the draft.
You
Just gonna
know,
preface
we,
that.
we we can we can root for them a little bit, all right? They've been little brothers to the
No, I'm
Cowboys
good.
for a while, you know.
I know, but it's yeah. I guess you're right.
But like, I think the thing about it is that, like you're saying, people are kind of overlooking is like they went out and they got these 2 young guys who are going to be leaders in the offense and the defense for hopefully 10 plus years, right? Hopefully these guys are going to contribute and they're going to teach the future generation of Texans players. And what I really like about it, that when they traded back for the 3rd pick, is they're finally like using this draft capital that they've gotten over these years, right? They traded away Deshaun Watson and they got a bunch of picks for him, and they're using him. They're finally like doing something in the draft that isn't nonsense. They're not just going to sit and pick. They're attacking the draft and they're trying to get these players that are going to improve their franchise.
Yeah, and I couldn't have said it better myself. The Texans are the ones that absolutely shaked up the draft, and they did it with the third pick.
Yeah. I mean,
You know, it's
if you're gonna improve your football team, you have to take chances, and I like this chance.
I agree. I completely agree. We had the Indianapolis Colts. Once again, they took Anthony Richardson, the quarterback out of Florida. I think he was the perfect fit there. I think drafting strictly on potential, I think he has less than 15 games in college. Again, better combine than Lamar Jackson. It's hard to pass up on a prospect like that. He checks a ton of boxes, but like I said, very, very limited time in college. So I see Anthony Richardson starting in the first year. If he does, I think it's a mistake. I think that he needs to get a lot of coaching and needs to get a lot of experience because not only does he not have a lot of college games, but that game speeds up when you jump to that next level, especially at the quarterback position. So if I were him, I'd pull a Patrick Mahomes and I would sit for a year. I would go ahead and take the league by storm. You know what I mean? Because it's hard to not draft him there just based off of his running ability. Because Lamar Jackson arguably didn't pass the ball that well first couple seasons in the NFL. He took that team to the playoffs every single time, and now he's starting to develop that passing game, or he has each year over year, right? The famous saying came out that he was a running back. Lamar Jackson's not a running back; he's a quarterback, folks. That's why he took him to the playoffs, right? He's that electric on the field with Florida. So we'll see what happens. He likes to lower his shoulder a little bit more than Lamar does. So we'll see if that kind of bites him. But I mean, I think it's a slam dunk for the Colts here.
Yeah, I like the pick a lot. I mean, if you think of what the Colts have done since Andrew Luck has left, it's been a whole lot of nothing. Like they've gotten these quarterbacks through free agency that really haven't been that good, Like it's fine. It's time to invest a pick in a quarterback that you can hopefully, like you said, develop into someone who's going to be a future starter for your team. And I'm a fan of it. I really am. And I like your point when sit the first year like Patrick Mahomes did and just let him develop as a quarterback and hopefully he's ready when the time comes. Obviously he's still going to be similar to a rookie when he steps on the field for his first NFL start and his first NFL season as a starter, but I think he's got so much talent and just a lot of traits that can make him really really good.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention who he has with him in the backfield with Jonathan Taylor and Michael
Yeah,
Pittman to throw to. You know what I mean? He
absolutely.
he walks. Oh, and by the way, the best guard in the league, left guard in the league with Quentin Nelson. Like, they have a really good line too. Their defense needs to improve a little bit, but the culture or a quarterback away from being a playoff contending team. I'm not saying going deep, but a playoff contending team because their
Yeah,
defense isn't that bad.
yeah, they
You know what I mean? And
they got a
but
really good team, like you were saying. Like it's hard to just plug and play a quarterback, but the Colts have somehow managed to have this good of a team and plug and play quarterbacks just don't work. And I don't know how. You know what I mean?
I
It's kind of
know.
amazing it's not been working for them. They haven't had great transfers, but uh, it, a supporting cast is very crucial for a young quarterback, and they have a really good one.
Exactly, exactly. And then Seahawks, I would say, arguably do the first crazy pick of the draft. A lot of this one felt good. This one felt really good. The cornerback Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois. I'd been harping on him all along. Said he was number one. Said he was a top 5 player on my top 100. You know, it's one of those things, right? Sometimes you're right and sometimes you're right. And this time I was right in these first 5 picks. A lot of the times in the first 5 you're not. The Texans come in there and make that trade at 3, but still Seattle, you could argue that was a bit of a stretch. Time that kid didn't have a touchdown thrown on him in college. What do you want him to do? Like, why not take him? The last kid that didn't have
Yeah.
a touchdown thrown on him in college was in New York right now, who's good. Now I'm not comparing the two, but I'm just saying when Seattle went on those runs, and guess what? They already got their quarterback. They already got a lot of offensive weapons. So I couldn't see them pulling a trigger on the offensive linemen that early there. You know, Carter sitting there from Georgia, but a little bit in the draft, and I like this pick with the Seahawks. I think that the Seahawks Pete Carroll went in there and said, look, we won with defensive backs when we won the Super Bowl. We need to go back and do that. And there's not a lot of coaches that do that in this game. So let's go, Pete.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I mean, when Seattle won that Super Bowl, man, they had the Legion of Boom. And who was behind it all? Pete Carroll, right? He's coaching that team and he's like, what are we doing, guys? Let's just make another
Yeah.
one. you know? I really like the pick. They got a lockdown corner, and hopefully he's going to be a cornerstone on that defense for years to come. And they could start building that defense. Like you said, they got a good offense. Gino's going to be he's going to be just fine. You know, later in the draft they did a little special with another pick, but we'll get
Yeah,
there when we get there.
yeah, exactly. Then the Arizona Cardinals trade at number 6, and they take offensive lineman who, like I said, was the most athletic offensive lineman coming into this draft, Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State. They drafted their future. When you have a quarterback like Kyler Murray, it's pretty impossible not to get a lineman that can move like that. He can play guard, he can play tackle, and he's very light on his feet. He loves to run in front of the quarterback. So I think it was a slam dunk pick for the Cardinals. I think they traded up there because they realized that last year they were. I mean, Kyler was hurt, right? Like
Yeah,
Kyler got hurt for a
a lot.
reason. You know what I mean? And yeah, and Kyler, whether you like it or not, he signed a big old contract. So unless they trade him, that's the future. And like realistically, you're not getting a better option. And Kyler's not a bad quarterback at all.
No,
It's just he's had injuries and he hasn't had the greatest team in Arizona. I'm not saying that it's not all on Kyler, but what I am saying is that perfect pick, perfect need. I think they nailed it with that trade.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you consider the circumstances in the offseason, everyone was kind of questioning like, is Arizona going to stick with Kyler? Right? Is this their guy?
Yep.
It's a new staff, and I think this is still their guy. I think they're still riding with Kyler. And when you have this guy, a very very mobile quarterback, obviously, you're going to want to get an offensive lineman who's going to jump out in front of the blocks and just be kind of faster than the defensive lineman. You want him to get up to that second level and start blocking the linebackers. So Kyler has space. Kyler has room to run if he wants it, right? So it gives him that dual threat option, which he loves to do. And he makes plays outside of the pocket. You need that in an offensive lineman. I'm a big fan of the pick. I thought it was really smart.
Absolutely. And then jumping to the Las Vegas Raiders, really the second best edge player linebacker in the draft. They took Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. Crosby and Tyree Wilson are going to wreak some havoc. That's going to be fun to watch if you're a Raiders fan. They also Raiders had a really good draft because they ended up getting, I think, Michael Mayer, the tight end from Notre Dame, in the third round, second round or third round. But the Raiders drafting good for once. There we go. You know what I mean? I have friends that are Raider fans, not bash on them at all, but the Raiders have not had the best drafts recently.
Yeah.
And I think this was a pretty solid draft by them. And I understand why they get this kid. You have to double Max. You have to double Max Crosby. If you don't, he can literally take over games. He's done it against the Chiefs before. Like they made it to where it was even a game because of Max Crosby getting like 3 sacks on Mahomes. You know what I mean? So you have to double that side. If you don't double, you at least have to chip with the running back and the tight end on the side. But you're adding a guy that's very fast, and you're adding a guy that's he has a lot of ability. I think obviously he needs coaching, but like I said, second, I think third best defensive player, fourth best defensive player in this draft behind Witherspoon, the cornerback out of Illinois we were just talking about. But I think it's a great pick by the Raiders. I think it's one that's really hard to pass up. Once again, I was kind of surprised they didn't go Jalen Carter here, but I do understand that they want speed coming off the edge.
Yeah. I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, pairing this guy with Crosby, that's going to be a 1-2 threat, and quarterbacks are going to have to adjust for that. And, offensive coordinators are going to have to adjust for these two guys, right? It's it's not going to be fun, but he's really good. It was probably one of my favorite picks of the first round.
Really. And going to pick number 8, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Running backs are people too, everybody. And the first running back went in the draft, Bijan Robinson. Wow, Atlanta. Wow. That was another slam dunk pick for me. They already have Desmond Ritter there, who is a very athletic quarterback. Kyle Pitts, who's a very athletic tight end. Now you have a literal franchise running back and Bijan Robinson. That is the perfect pick and the perfect fit for this team. And guess who he gets to learn from? Patterson, who there's no way they're not going to bring him back for a year at least. To have him if he's not already back on the year, to have him teach Bijan. But man, a good pick for a team that needs a lot of help. That it was a very smart pick. Once again, running backs are at that skill level, you cannot pass up. And he cannot fall out of the top 10. In my mock, I had him going to the Eagles, but he went to the Falcons at 8. I didn't see it coming, but I really, really like the pick with Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Jones doesn't value running backs, I think, as much as the rest of us. And this pick was awesome because why not pair your young quarterback with a young running back? I mean, they can grow together, and you're going to lean on a guy who you're going to run into the ground if you're Atlanta. They're going to give him the ball a lot, and they're going to just let him go, and that's super smart. You know, a program.
Pick him in fantasy, everybody. Pick
Yes,
him in fantasy. Keep
yes.
going, Tanner.
Please pick him in fantasy. He's going to be that. He's going to be that rookie for this year, but
Oh yeah,
he's it just makes, like you said, it just makes too much sense, and I love the pick. I'm a really big fan of it.
this first round was so many awesome picks.
Yeah.
And here might be the best pick of the first round. Number 9, the Philadelphia Eagles trade. Guy that I kept saying was falling. Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. Arguably the number 1 defensive prospect and on some boards number 1 prospect in the draft. And he fell to number 9. Eagles now have him and oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the defensive tackle. Jordan Davis that they drafted last year from Georgia. Good luck running up the middle if you're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. That's all I have to say. They didn't want to take any chances. They traded up a spot to get him. They didn't give up a lot to get there. I want to say it was a 4th maybe. They got their next 2 defensive tackles for however many years they want to sign them. It is just that simple. Those 2 are so good. And now they're together on the same team in the NFL. And fans, if I were you, I'm going to give it away. You had the best draft. Eagles had an incredible draft, and this is the way they started it out with Jalen Carter out of Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, these guys, I mean, it's Philly, right? They're gonna have a good defense one way or another, and that's just what they do. And I'm completely okay with that, right? It's like Baltimore, you know, they always are gonna be a defensive heavy team. That's just like their culture there. Same with Philly, they're a defensive heavy team. That's their culture there. And they just basically drafted Fletcher Cox's replacement in 1 round. And they're like, hey, here you go, Fletcher Cox, you're getting pretty old. Let's just draft another one. You know, it I'm glad it wasn't Bijan, you know, but also I'm not happy that he went to the Eagles, Jalen Carter. But in terms of, you know, the Cowboys, it's nothing they haven't dealt with. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully he won't blow up Tony Pollard every time he tries to run in our backfield. But he's probably going to. He's an amazing player, and the Eagles got an amazing player.
It's the NFC East this year is going to be maybe a wild card year for us. We'll see what happens.
Hey, last year was a wild card year, you know.
I mean, we didn't make it that far. You know what I mean? We got to get a little bit farther. You know what I'm saying? Then number 10, Chicago. Like I said, the trade they took an offensive tackle. I really think they would have taken Paris Johnson here out of Ohio State, but he was gone. The next best tackle with Darnell Wright from Tennessee. On their board, on my board, Peter Skoronski, who went right afterwards to the Tennessee Titans, was a better tackle. I would have definitely taken Peter Skoronski, but you know they took Darnell Wright, who is the reason they took him because the Bears run the ball a lot, and what this guy does, he's very, very good at run blocking. So I totally understand. Will he live up to the hype of being because he's number 10, a top 10 offensive lineman? Because you can't give up a lot of sacks when you're a top 10 offensive lineman. But we'll see what happens. And like I said, the Tennessee Titans, all I got to say is great pick. Can't believe he fell to you at number 11.
Yeah. I mean, two offensive tackles go. Um, asking you a question, which one of these guys do you think is like the more athletic kind of tackle?
Darnell,
Darno?
for sure. Yeah, Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, for sure. But the thing with Darnell Wright, though, I did not have a high first round grade on him. I
Really?
think I may even had a second round grade on him. I think I went back and ended up putting a late first on Darnell Wright, but I thought that was a bit of a stretch for him. But once again, that's the reason they took him, is because he is that athletic offensive lineman.
Yeah. I mean, and same reason why, the Cardinals pick their guy, right? It's just get out in front of blocks and you want to
Titans.
protect Justin Fields.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you had. Oh yes, I thought you were talking about. I
No,
thought you
no,
were
no.
talking
I'm
about the
talking about Darnell
Titans.
Wright, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one to pass up there, right? The Titans and the Bears their next offensive tackle in the future, and it was running offensive tackles way earlier than a lot of people thought. Then the Detroit Lions at pick 12 have another running back in their backfield with Jamar Gibbs out of Alabama. Okay, you know what I mean? Player comp was Kamara coming out of college for me, so it's really hard not to take him top 10. I kind of understand. He goes 12. Really had a more of a late first round on him, but it's an Alabama running back, and they've proven themselves time and time again in the NFL. So it's really hard not to do it. Now, I think that was a bad pick until the next day
yeah.
when the Detroit Lions traded DeAndre Swift to the Philadelphia Eagles. Goodness, Philly, you're doing it again. Now they have Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery is their 1-2 punch. So because David Montgomery is easily that red zone player, and Jamar Gibbs is going to be in, on obvious passing situations every single time. Probably going to throw him up in the slot every now and then too. So when the pick happened, I didn't understand it. The next day, completely justified. I love the pick.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Right. You have two different kind of backs in your running back field now, and that's just how the NFL has turned. We talked about it a couple episodes with like a physical back and like a more like Tony Pollard kind of
Pass
back.
catching.
Yeah, pass catching back. There you go. Thank you. But that's just how the NFL has become now. You need to have those two kind of backs. And like you said, I didn't really understand it, but DeAndre Swift to the Eagles shed some light on the situation. And I heard a rumor actually that Dallas was trying to trade for DeAndre Swift as well, but it just
Of
didn't happen.
course.
It just didn't happen, in typical Cowboys
Of,
fashion.
of, of course he goes to the Eagles. That's hilarious. But the Eagles arguably got an upgrade with running back, even though they let Miles Sanders go and now save 20 million on the cap with their defensive tackle Hargrave going in free agency, arguably the best free agent, and with getting, you know, their guy out of Georgia, his name's escaping me, Jalen Carter.
Hmm.
So once again, hitting it back to the Eagles, getting off on a tangent there, but you said, you know what I mean? Kind of a puzzling pick whenever it first happened, but then once the next day it was like, okay, yeah, that makes total sense. But now jumping to the Green Bay Packers, defensive end out of Iowa gets taken, Lucas Van Ness. I have it here on my article. I really thought the Packers were going to go tight end and wide receiver, but they paired, Gary and Van Ness together. So I understand the pick. It fills a need. I don't think that is necessarily a sexy pick, but Lucas Van Ness is I think the third best pass rusher in this draft, and pass rushers are valued very highly. So even though if I have him as a mid to late first rounder and he goes 13, I think that's a pretty good value pick there for the Packers.
Yeah, when I look at the pick, it just kind of it looks like a Packers pick. It's like, okay, well,
Exactly.
they're doing whatever the Packers kind of want to do, and they're just going to keep doing it. I like it, They improved their defense, and I'm a fan of that. I probably would have like picked like a receiver here or just a pass catching tight end like you were talking about, but you got to give some weapons to Jordan Love. I don't love the pick, but I mean, we've seen what Jordan Love can do a little bit, and it hasn't been pretty. So the best situation I think would be get him more weapons and just get him more targets, people who can get open more easily. And I mean, it kind of looks like they're doing the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. I guess they just don't value receivers nearly as much as they value defensive linemen, I guess.
Yeah, which is an odd strategy when you got a quarterback that's definitely going to need some help.
Yeah.
The receiver didn't go till pick 20. In my mock, I had my number one receiver going in the top 10 because I think that's the talent level that he was. Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State, but a receiver doesn't even go till later on in the 20s. So maybe that was what Green Bay was thinking, right? Maybe it was a little bit too early to take a receiver. For me, though, I would have taken a chance on the receiver or the tight end there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I get it. You need defensive linemen, but I don't know if Van Ness out of Iowa is going to win you a game. I think a wide receiver can win you multiple games.
I
So
agree.
that's just my opinion on the pick. I still like the pick. I still understand the pick, but I would have gone another direction there. I don't think it was a bad pick though. Now Pittsburgh Steelers go in and trade because they realize, oh shit, all the offensive tackles are off the board. I need to go get an offensive tackle. So they take an offensive tackle from Georgia, Broderick Jones. Great tackle for the future. Kenny Pickett needs somebody to protect him from the right or the left side. I think he can play both. So we'll kind of see what happens. With his career, I think it was early for Broderick Jones, but it's hard to argue that Georgia team taking prospects in the first round.
Yeah, I completely agree. You need to protect Kenny Pickett. He's still learning, he's young, and he didn't have a great rookie season. So the best thing that you can do is protect him and make him comfortable in the pocket. So I like the pick. I think it makes a lot of sense.
And to hit on what Tanner said earlier, we're going to pick 15 with the New York Jets trading the defensive end Will McDonald, the fourth out of Iowa State. Not for sure that the Jets were trading here to do something crazy. No, they got a defensive end out of Iowa State that I think probably would have still been there when they picked, but I mean, they need defensive line help, and if you're the Jets, you have Aaron Rodgers, and honestly, you can't really not justify it when you're bringing over Aaron Rodgers. You have a small window. You got 2-3
Yes.
years, so you're going to bring in everybody you can these next 2-3 years. You're going to go get free agents. You're going to draft like crazy, and then after that, I need to go there, Jets fans, right? But let's worry about these 2-3 years now. But that was the first pick where I didn't really understand the trade. I don't think that was necessarily a great pick. I understand why they did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I want to preface like what I'm going to say for this pick with the Jets just recently went and got Randall Cobb to play for their team. So, and I'm pretty sure they already have
They
the
have Garrett Wilson.
they have Garrett Wilson, but the other Green Bay receiver that was with Rodgers for a while, he was like the second, but I don't.
Oh, you're
Is it
right.
but yeah, they're essentially they just
That
recreated
was
the receiving
Is
core.
it Lazard?
I think it's Lazard. Um,
It might be Lazard.
but
I'll look at
they basically just repeated the Green Bay receiving core, added Garrett Wilson, and just plugged in Aaron Rodgers. And like, all right, we're good to go here. And so, what was their next biggest need? Like you said, it's the defensive line. I think it's okay. Like you said, it's not sexy, but it fills a need.
It is Lazard, by the way.
Okay, cool. We're right. It's not
Just looked it
sexy,
up.
but it fills a need, and it makes sense. Like you said, though, he probably would have been there if they hadn't traded up.
Exactly. Exactly. Then at 16, you have the Washington Commanders. They take a cornerback from Mississippi State, Emmanuel Forbes. You know, like I said here in my article, bit of a stretch for me here. I had a second round grade on him, and I thought the pick was going to be Gonzalez from Oregon. I think Christian Gonzalez from Oregon could have arguably been a top 10 cornerback. He ended up falling to the pick right after this one, which once again tells me that I think this should have probably been Christian Gonzalez. I understand why they went for Emmanuel Forbes in Washington, but at the same time, he was not my second ranked corner. I think he was my third or fourth ranked corner there. So not the worst pick, but at the same time, Washington, I think you missed on the corner there. What do you think, Tanner?
I completely agree. And New England, they traded and they got Christian Gonzalez, who, if you remember, Stephon Gilmore, who's now a Cowboy, left the Eagles a couple years back. And they have a need at cornerback now. So they went out and they saw an opportunity. They got their guy on defense. It's such an amazing pick by the Patriots and just such a not amazing pick by Washington. I mean, they had it sitting right in front of them and they just didn't pick it. Sure, maybe 5 years down the line, we're going to be saying how great of a pick this was from Washington. But as it stands right now, I didn't really understand it. And I remember what you said. We were watching it together when it happened. You're like, I don't even have this guy in this round. And I was,
He was absolutely a second round grade in my board.
yeah, so I was like, okay, well, this is just Washington being Washington, I guess. But I didn't understand
Exactly.
it. New England, good job for recognizing it, and they went up, they got their guy, and he'll be a cornerstone for that defense once again.
And Tanner nailed it. The next pick, the New England Patriots traded immediately after Washington didn't take their cornerback and got Christian Gonzalez. He was my 16th ranked prospect, and he went to pick 17. So
Yeah,
great job there,
I
New
saw a lot
England.
of
You know
I
what I
saw a
mean?
lot of
After
people ranking him as their top corner in the draft, Christian Gonzalez.
and once again, I stood strong and put Von Witherspoon there,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah,
there was a clear gap there. I don't think the gap was 12 picks though. I'll say that.
uh-huh.
So I think we both nailed it. Not only a value pick, but potentially the steal of the first round. It's really hard to say that Jalen Carter's not the steal of the first round, but probably number two right there with the Patriots. Then Detroit, who is just being their head coach is just all over this pick, Dan Campbell. The Detroit Lions take the linebacker Jack Campbell from Iowa. Okay, that's cool. You know what I mean? I did not have a first round linebacker in this draft, let alone a linebacker in the top 20. I did not think that was going to happen. This is my first ranked linebacker, but he's in the bottom second for me. But the Detroit Lions are clearly showing you a draft strategy. They are picking their best player of need their board, I
Yeah.
think is what they're doing, because there's no way that you can argue that other positions are not needed more. Once again, I would have even though their wide receivers are solid, wide receivers a need that
Hmm.
screams here. There's also their corners are still great that's going here. There's other positions that they need that they could have gotten here, but they draft a linebacker, Iowa in the first round. Now, like I said, a round early for me is Detroit built on. Detroit really, really goes for those linebackers. And when your head coach was a former linebacker and the number one linebacker is still there on the board, probably would have been there in the second too, Dan. Still on the board in the first round, you're gonna get your guy. Detroit was the biggest head scratcher after the first round for me. Was the biggest head scratcher. And then
Yeah. I just want to butt in a little bit, and correct you a little bit. But Dan Campbell was a tight end.
he was a tight end.
Yeah.
Dang it.
He got the
Well,
same last name though.
he, yeah, he could have gone tight end there.
You could have.
but,
You could have.
but yeah, you had the best tight end sitting there on the board. But I don't know. That wasn't a question mark pick to me. A few, like Tanner said, a few years down the road, maybe he's still there, signed a second contract, and then round pick is completely justified. But there was a lot of other positions I would have gone there if I was Detroit.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about the pick, like it it kind of reminds me of when the Cowboys took Leighton Vander Esch in the first round, and I was like, who is this? It's like I've never heard of him. This random dude. And it's just like, okay, well, now he's still on the Cowboys team, and he's a very big contributor in the defense, and hopefully that's what they're seeing with Jack Campbell from Iowa. But I really thought this was going to be receiver. I mean, Jamison Williams, he gets suspended for gambling for some reason. I don't know why he was doing that for like 6 games. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is your number one. I don't even know who's the other guy that they have, but I thought a pass catcher receiver would be like a lock here, But I think it's obvious that they're showing that these guys are going to run the ball. That's what Campbell wants to do. He wants to run the ball, and he wants to have a good defense, and I respect it. I respect the pick. He's going old football. That's how Dan Campbell is. He wants to run the ball, and he wants to play some smash mouth football.
And I couldn't have said it. I couldn't have said it better myself. Then you have 19 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking a defensive tackle when they already have Vita Vea. Good luck. Once again, good luck running up the middle on that team. That's easily the number 2 defensive tackle for me. Kalijah Cansey out of Pittsburgh, who they took there. I mean, I get it. Like I understand the pick for Tampa. Once again, I think that there's a lot of other positions they could have gone, but I look at that as a very, very good value pick. And it may not have necessarily, the Buccaneers may not necessarily have needed a defensive tackle, because if you think about it, Vita Vea is literally like 2 defensive tackles in one.
He's
He
pretty
is
big.
he's literally so big, but that's a really nice pick because you have Vita Vea there, who's that bigger, stronger, athletic guy, and then you literally have Kalijah Cansey, who's the exact same version. So now you have to game plan for a smaller version, essentially, of Kalijah Cansey of Vita Vea. So it's going to be a very, very fun time to watch teams try to run on Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I mean, you can with the defensive line and just what I've learned is you can just you know rotate guys in and out, and that's exactly what they're going to do with this guy. Vita Vea gets tired, he goes in, and they're going to do packages with both of them in there, right? And this guy gets to learn from Vita Vea and become the best that he can possibly be. They don't want
Yeah.
to get the ball ran on them, and this is a perfect way to do it, right? They had some off-season departures. I don't remember who all they were, but it was some pretty big ones on the defense, and so they're just plugging more defensive players, reloading. I think it's a smart pick. I understand it.
Yeah. And then 20 Seattle Seahawks take the wide receiver off the board when they already have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but it's hard to not take this wide receiver off the board. He is easily the best wide receiver in this draft for me. Really good to see him go or be the first wide receiver get drafted, because I think he has that it factor that not many players have. And if he hits, don't know the contract situation of DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
I know he signed there. I know Tyler Lockett signed there too, but I don't know the future of those two. If Jackson Smith and Jigba comes in and does what I think he's going to do now, he is in the best possible situation that a wide receiver can be in. I think that this draft, you're going to see these wide receivers probably be very high on Rookie of the Year ratings throughout the whole season rankings, because all on very good teams. Wide receivers that got drafted, they didn't get taken until pick 20.
Yeah.
That's crazy. A wide receiver didn't get taken until pick 20. And guess what? This is a very deep wide receiver class.
These are
so
playoff
to
teams.
me, exactly. And you're getting the Seattle Seahawks got the number 1 wide receiver on the board in the draft, in my opinion, at pick 20. Already have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. You're going to stick him out on the field as a slot player, or you're going to stick Tyler Lockett in your slot, or put DK in your slot and have fun with a slot cornerback trying to guard him. It's not even going to be close. So I'm not a Seattle fan by any stretch of the means, but man, this is a fun football team to watch. I mean, and with Geno hitting, and with Breece Hall, they're young. They have Breece Hall, right? They're young halfback. Oh man, this is a fun team. This is a really fun team. I'm assuming you like the pick, Tanner, or did you not like the pick?
I I freaking love the pick. I think it just makes too much sense. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I was sorry. I was saying Kenneth Walker's who you're thinking of.
Kenneth Walker. I
For
always get
Seattle.
them mixed up.
Isn't Brees Hall? Isn't he in the New York Jets? I think he is. Yeah, those two are
I
hard.
always get them,
Well,
those two mixed up.
because they're in the same draft, and it's like they're kind of similar
Yeah.
draft position. But I freaking love this pick. I saw it happen, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh no, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
the future is very, very bright for JSN, is what I will now call him, because I do not want to call him his full name. But he, you're learning between Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, two very different types of receivers who are going to let you learn a lot of different types of things as a receiver.
Yeah.
And if you're Pete Carroll or you're the GM for Seattle, you don't have to worry about another receiver, right? You have your one for the future. He's going to be fine, and you can possibly let one of those big guys go when contract time comes up. Especially DK, his contract's going to be huge. and then you could just let JSN come in and let him be the number one or the number two, whatever it is at that time, right? I love the pick. I think it's awesome, and Gino's gonna get another weapon, just just to air it out.
Exactly,
I think it's really
exactly.
fun.
And then follow up another wide receiver because this is what happens in the draft. When you get one position go, then you start to get a run.
Yeah.
Keep saying with positions how early in the first round offensive tackles they started to get in a run. Well, for the next 4 picks we have wide receivers. Pick 20 to pick 24, there were or 20 to 23, there were wide receivers. 4 wide receivers taken. The next wide receiver off the board was my number 2 wide receiver, Quentin Johnson, out of TCU. He went to the Chargers, who already have Keenan Allen, who just recently signed Mike Williams. That tells me that Keenan Allen's probably not going to get re-upped when the time comes, but I can't say anything better than what Tanner just said. They now have their wide receiver for the future, and Justin Herbert gets another weapon. Stop. You know what I mean? Stop.
Yeah,
Like,
stop.
I'm sorry, but stop. Austin Eckler's, I want to leave. Just kidding. I'm going to just stay more. You know what I mean? There's no way that you're adding another wide receiver and arguably the best pure deep like deep threat bomb catcher. You know what I mean? Like he is somebody that's not going to outrun you, but he is going to go up and get the ball. And you are not going to beat him. A true 50-50 ball guy. Have one with Mike Williams. They just got another one. But guess what? He's faster. Williams. At least he plays faster on tape for me. I think it was a great pick. And Kellen Moore coming in as the new offensive coordinator. You got some weapons, dude.
This I pose a question. All right. Do you think the Chargers, specifically Justin Herbert, obviously, do you think he's going to lead the NFL in passing yards next year?
I think that Justin Herbert will be top 3 in passing yards.
Okay.
Leading the league, I don't know. It's always hard for me to. Well, let me take that back. He's absolutely going to be top 4. You're going to have, barring no injuries, Mahomes, Allen, Herbert. I think those guys are all going to be like top 5 this year.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. There's so many weapons, and just the exact same reasons for like the Seattle pick, right? This guy is so much fun to watch, and he's just gonna stretch the defense. But he just gets to learn behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams again. Like that is just it's such a great situation for a young receiver to come into. It's ridiculous, and Herbert's gonna have a ball with him. I love it. I love both of these picks.
Absolutely. And then you have the Baltimore Ravens taking another wide receiver, Zay Flowers, out of Boston College. Uh, that's a home run hitter and an absolute burner. At the wide receiver position, Baltimore just signed Lamar Jackson to the biggest contract in NFL history. They said here is a shiny new toy to go along with that big contract. They literally drafted Hollywood Brown out of Oklahoma, who was the exact same player
Yeah.
is this kid, and it didn't really work out. Then he went to Arizona, and before he got injured, was having a better career at Arizona. It looked, but I mean, the Ravens have a specific scheme, and it is built around Lamar Jackson. I think that if Quentin Johnson was there, might have taken him, but they have Rashad Bateman is their number 1 wide receiver right now. They have Odell Beckham now is their number 2, and then they're bringing in Zay Flowers, who's going to compete for 2 or 3 right off the rip. So you don't necessarily have that burner, and I understand why they brought him or why they got him here, and they got him at pick 22. I think that Zay Flowers would have been there anyway. At pick 22, I think the other 2 wide receivers with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Quentin Johnson, I don't think that they were going to be there, but the fact that they got the fastest burner, in my opinion, on tape in the draft, I understand it. But I also question Ravens office and say, you drafted this exact same player. I know that their scouts would probably say, you're an idiot and you sit on your couch and you have a podcast, and I scout and I'm like, I understand. But that's the exact same player. And they took him right around the exact same spot. I don't know. I know Hollywood Brown had a little bit of, some drops early on. Lamar wasn't as accurate as he now is, but I get the pick. At the same time, I don't know if I fully understand it because that's like taking the exact same player just a couple years later.
Yeah, I think the Ravens were just kind of set on taking a receiver here. They didn't really care who was
Yep.
going to be on the board, but they were going to take the top one available. And that just happened to be Zay Flowers, and he's a burner. And hopefully it'll work out this time because it's hard, right? Not to love this kind of player. Marquise Brown, he had good moments. He had flashes when he was on the Ravens. And hopefully Zay Flowers can just bring more of that is kind of what I think they're thinking. And of course they go out and they get Odell Beckham in the offseason. And so at least they're trying to address the issue rather than kind of shoving it under the rug like they have in previous seasons.
Exactly. Exactly. And then the Vikings' last wide receiver that gets taken in the first round here, they got Jordan Addison out of USC. They're all in on their offense. A lot of rumors here that they were going to take a quarterback. They didn't. They're sticking with Kirk, and they added another wide receiver to the mix with Justin Jefferson because, remind you, they lost Adam Thielen to, I want to say, the Carolina Panthers in free agency this year.
Yeah.
So you have Jordan Addison out of USC coming in. I get it. I think that he was the last wide receiver with the major. I would put Jordan Addison personally above Zay Flowers from Boston College. Once again, like we just talked about, it was a specific need for the Ravens there. And the Minnesota Vikings have their number 2 wide receiver day one. And the greatest part about going to Minnesota is look, Justin Jefferson, he's going to eat. He get
Yes.
150 plus probably catches. Know how many targets he's going to get. Going in and you already know that. There's already so much weight taken off of your shoulders. So I think he's going to be a pretty solid player and be a great number 2 for them.
I I like the pick. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's just you have Justin Jefferson, you can't give him the ball every single play, but if you have this young kid and let's see what he can do. You know what I mean? There's no pressure on him. He gets to learn from one of the best receivers in the NFL. I again walking into a great situation. These young receivers, and I really hope they all succeed because there's kind of no reason not to.
Exactly. And then at number 24, you have the New York Giants who trade and get cornerback Deontay Banks out of Maryland. He was the number 24 player on my prospect board, and he goes number 24. They got the best tackling cornerback in the draft there. I know that's not necessarily a need whenever you have to are a cornerback in the NFL in terms of tackling. You're more worried about coverage, but I understand the pick here. It's later on in the first round. I think New York really needs a lot of help, and I think that cornerback is definitely their number 1 position of need, arguably for me. So he's going to step in and automatically be a number 2, and then by next season could potentially be a number 1.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think New York here probably would have gone receiver if they didn't get so wiped out with the run and receivers because they need one. It's pretty obvious. But I like the pick. Just bolster up your defense because there's a lot of good ones in the NFC East, and you're going to need it.
Exactly. And then the Buffalo Bills, who this is number 3 on arguably the steal of the first round, they traded right above the Cowboys to get Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. Yes, the Buffalo Bills somehow landed the number 1 tight end prospect in this draft.
Wow.
And I want to say either, I don't know, I want to say it was Charles Davis or Daniel Jeremiah for NFL Network. I know it was an NFL Network analyst, but comparison was Travis Kelce. So for him to fall to 25 and you already have Dawson Knox there and Buffalo, I mean, teams like this should not be allowed to make these great of moves, man. They're already so
It's
good,
mean.
and the AFC is just getting it is rude. It's downright rude. You're
It's
right.
mean.
Just getting so much better. The fact that he falls all the way to 25 and Buffalo takes him. Wow. I just have to tip my hat to Buffalo.
I
Just absolutely have to tip my hat there.
If you are not getting this guy in fantasy, I don't know what your problem is. All right, you get him because he's gonna get some receptions. Okay, he's pass catching tight end. Did the Cowboys want him? Who pick right after this? Did they want him? I don't know. We're never going to know because he didn't fall to us. But I love the pick. I think it's just awesome. Why you know give Josh Allen more targets. Just give them all to him. He's fine. He'll make them
Why
open.
not?
Why not?
Yeah,
Just
why
give
not?
them more. I love it. I think it's so
Yeah.
smart.
I just can't believe that Dawson Knox just wasn't enough. Like that
Right?
dude is really solid. And then you're like, but Kincaid's there from Utah.
I
And all
know.
we got to do is give up like nothing to get him.
Is
Yeah, okay, I'm down.
is
Like
this is
that's
this
such.
now the best tight end room in the NFL?
I mean, it's hard to argue.
Yeah.
Hard to argue the best tight end room. I don't know who San Francisco has behind George Kittle, but like and then the
Exactly.
Giants with Darren Waller, there's no way. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
Mark Andrews with the Ravens, no, because I mean that could be close though. The Ravens could definitely be close, but here's their song. I'm missing a huge tight end, and I don't know who I've. It's like there's a huge tight end I'm missing. I've already said George Kittle.
You already said
Yeah,
Kelsey. That's the only other big one.
I already said I'm talking about the. That's right. So yeah, and there's no way about that tight end because their second tight end on the depth chart is a very big run blocking tight end because they have Travis Kelsey.
They
So
don't really
yeah,
need
that
anyone.
arguably is the best tight end room. It's going to be a fun offense to watch even more, which I didn't think we'd be able to say that, but
You already know I'm
Buffalo.
keeping Josh Allen, in our fantasy league. He's coming back. He was the keeper
That's
already, but now I'm more happy. So
That's a hard one to pass up. I'd probably even go him over Mahomes at this point with all the weapons that they're adding. But then the Dallas Cowboys go there at pick 26. They take the defensive tackle Mozzie Smith out of Michigan. Right from our article, I said a true run stopper and Smith with tremendous upside, but he needs to find the consistency. I was very surprised it wasn't Brees out of Clemson or Kincaid from Notre Dame wasn't picked here, but Kincaid ended up falling Dalton Kincaid. I meant Michael Myers. I get those names mixed up. Michael Myers from Notre Dame, and he ended up falling big time. So looking back at that, I guess it's kind of good we didn't take Michael Myers there. Still would have been really nice to have that tight end of the future when your number one tight end for the Cowboys is Jake Ferguson. But you take a defensive tackle because you are in a division that has really good running backs.
yeah,
And with DeAndre Swift now and with Saquon Barkley, those guys like to run up the middle. And I understand the pick now. I didn't grade the Cowboys draft relatively well because the way when I grade drafts is I grade them where they were ranked on my board, how kind of early they went. So I think that this player easily was a second round grade. I do not think he was a first round grade. I think that Mozzie Smith a very high ceiling, but the biggest thing with him is consistency. If Mozzie Smith develops a consistent, it's a solid pick. If he doesn't, this is literally Taco Charlton from the same school, except obviously this one is a defensive. This defensive player is a defensive tackle. Taco Charlton was a defensive end, but I understand the pick because you are filling a need. Now, why would you draft a run-stopping defensive tackle in the first round? Well, pick 26. It's already kind of in the second. You know what I mean? He's not going to be there when you pick again. You don't want to take the chance of him not being there and fall off from defensive tackles from there. It's huge. There's a huge gap
yeah.
from there. So I think Dan Quinn, the defensive end or the defensive coordinator, had his hands all over this pick. I think that they got the best run stopping defensive tackle in the draft, aside from Jalen Carter, because I think Jalen Carter can do it all, but arguably better than the defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh with Kalijah Cansey. So it's looking back at it, it's not the worst pick, but I do think that they stretched a little bit on this one.
It's interesting because a lot of people, at least that I talked to, kind of like this pick. Like, you, for instance, kind of didn't like this pick. They wanted a tight end, but I've been saying it since a month, 2 months out. I really don't think the Cowboys were going to take a tight end here, as much as everyone
Yeah.
believes. And I just want to follow it up with, like, I did a little research. The last time the Cowboys picked a tight end in the first round was at number 22 in 1997 with David LaFleur. And if you don't know who that is, it's probably because he only had 60 games played, 85 receptions, and 700 receiving yards. Also 12 touchdowns in his entire NFL career. So I I don't blame the Cowboys for not going tight end here, especially after Buffalo kind of took the only one that I would have picked at that spot. So I'm perfectly fine with the pick because they're like, okay, that guy's gone. Let's go get something that's going to fill a need that we've been having for the past like 5 years. You know what I mean? Like the Cowboys just haven't been good at run stopping in a while. And I
It's true.
it's frustrating as a fan because they don't do anything about it. They get these tackles or defensive tackles like Tristan Hill or um
Yeah,
what is
more like athletic style defensive tackles. I know
yeah.
exactly what you're saying.
I
Yeah.
mean, yes, but at the same time, this guy is very athletic. Mozzie Smith is, and
He is. Well, yeah, let me preface that. Not a run stopping defensive tackle. There you go.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Hill was
Um,
not a run stopper.
yes, and I like the pick a lot because it just makes sense. They're finally, you know, targeting a position of need in the first round. I mean, it's just put him in there. Let's see what he can do. Let's see what Dan Quinn can make of him. I trust Dan Quinn in these situations. That's what Dan Quinn wanted. Like I said, I think if Dalton Kincaid would have been there, they probably might have taken Monty Smith over Dalton Kincaid anyways, and everyone would have been like, "What are you doing?" But it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. You know what I mean? I didn't know the stat. That was the last time the Cowboys have taken a tight end in the first round. Next time I'll do a little bit more research. That is crazy to hear, but I mean, it does make sense, right? Like
Yeah,
it really does make sense. Like you said it, the Cowboys have been getting shredded up the middle. They've been in the later 20s pretty much for the last, I think, 4 or 5 seasons, like you said, Tanner, on specifically run stopping. Even though their defense has been very, very good, their run stopping has been toward the bottom of the league
but
for
like,
the past,
but like
I don't even know how long.
if you can fix this situation with the run stopping. Not like completely, like just make it a little bit better. You have one of the best pass rush teams, defenses in the NFL, and you're getting to put an offense in a shorter or like a longer yardage situation, right? After running on first, second down, whatever. And you can let your pass rush go to work. Next, you have your corners that you got in the free agency, right? You have a good safety crew, you got a good linebacker crew. This is the only thing that makes this defense bad is their inability to stop the rush. So I love that they're paying attention to it, and I'm a big fan of the pick.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if Dallas jumps back up into the top 5 defenses next year. Is Mozzie Smith going to have an immediate impact on the Cowboys? Probably not.
Yeah,
Probably not. But then again, no, right? Michigan was a very good run stopping team largely because of Mozzie Smith. And guess what? Like I said earlier, he is athletic too. He's very athletic. So it's an exciting prospect, but it's to me it's hard because there was better defensive tackle prospects on the board, but it was a need. They picked a need specifically for run stopping there. So totally understand it. Then the Jaguars are of course going to get offensive help for Trevor Lawrence. They need to protect him as much as they can. They get the offensive tackle Antoine Harrison out of Oklahoma. You know, you have to protect your franchise quarterback, and after Antoine Harrison out of Oklahoma, it's pretty hard to say that any other offensive lineman would have gone in the first round. So I completely understand the pick with the Jaguars. They're picking at 27. I still can't believe the Jaguars picked at 27 this year. That's crazy. It's
it's fun.
exciting times now that Trevor Lawrence is hitting and Kirk is hitting too, and that offense is going. So it's a pick, and there's no other position I would have gone there.
I think it makes sense just for all the reasons all the other tackles were taken. Like just protect your future franchise quarterback. It makes sense.
Exactly. And then Cincinnati Bengals at 28. Once again, a really good team somehow gets a really good prospect. The defensive end, Miles Murphy out of Clemson. Absolute steal. He's an immediate impact player, and he fills a need. He was in my top 5 defensive ends. I want to say he was number 3 or number 4 on my top 5. He was definitely a top 20 player for me. So somehow the Bengals, the AFC specifically, is just rocking and rolling this year, and it's going to be a really fun addition to the Bengals because you have, oh my gosh,
Trey
what is his
Hendrickson.
name? Trey Hendrickson. Thank
Yeah.
you, Hendrickson. You have him already, who's going to get at least 10 sacks that season. He
Yeah.
always somehow does. And then you have Miles Murphy, who you're adding on the other side of him, who gets to learn from him. So I think it's the Bengals. Of course, they get a really good pass rusher.
The Bengals have surprisingly been like the past 2 years, past 3 years, they've just been like sitting at the end of the draft, just kind of sitting and picking. And they're getting these good players that nobody picks. They're like, what's wrong with you
Exactly.
guys? I'm going to pick this guy because he fell. What's wrong with you guys? I'm going to pick this guy who fell. You know? I love it. It's kind of the same reason, like when the Raiders drafted Tyree Wilson, like earlier in this round. Same reasons why they did it. So they can pair one edge rusher with another edge rusher, so that you can make offenses game plan for that kind of situation. I think it's smart, and they got a really good player.
Exactly. And then the New Orleans Saints at number 29 took the defensive tackle out of Clemson. Both defensive linemen out of Clemson go here back to back. And like I said, Brian Brees out of Clemson there at 28 for the Saints, I think, is also a steal. He's a highly effective pass rusher at the defensive tackle position. That is why Dallas really didn't go for that. Like Tanner said earlier, they already drafted a player like a Tristan Hill who was a highly effective pass rusher at the defensive tackle position, but it didn't really work out it that way. It's
Yeah.
very hard to be a dominant defensive tackle, especially in this day and age when you're going against guards like Quentin Nelson and Zach Martin in the NFL. It's going to be a little bit harder. Um, you have Brian Brees going there. I thought he was easily top 5 defensive tackle, my number 3rd uh, defensive tackle. So Orleans there is a great pick for New Orleans and great addition to that line.
Yeah, I remembered who I was thinking of earlier. Chauncey Golston for the Cowboys is the
Uh,
other DT that we kind of have that is a lot more not a run stopper, but he gets to the passer and he gets to the quarterback. And if you remember
yeah,
his
that
rookie
was, yeah.
season, he got like a bunch of like sacks and stuff in the first like half of his rookie season. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is crazy." Um, yeah, and then it just kind of fell off after that. But it's it's kind of like for the New Orleans Saints, you hit it on the head, Chad. That's why Dallas didn't draft him, but he's a really good player, and that's why New Orleans did take him. It's just not what Dallas wanted, and this is what New Orleans did want.
Exactly. And then Philadelphia Eagles that are going to take everybody that Georgia has. They have the defensive end Nolan Smith. Um, I mean, like I said, the best first round grade of the draft. That solidified, that sealed it right there.
Yeah.
Texans are right there with him, but he almost falls out of the first round and immediately becomes an impact player. They don't necessarily need him to step in now and go, and he's going to learn from some very, very good on that line with Hassan Reddick and Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network. His player comparison is Hassan Reddick, their current defensive end. So they're essentially getting another Hassan Reddick who had one of the best seasons that out of defensive ends last season. So that's why the Eagles are the only team that I gave an A+ to in the draft because they arguably get a guy. I had a late or an early 2 on him, but I can understand why you're picking at 30 with Philadelphia, right? That's already kind of the second round, and you just so happen to get Nolan Smith out of Georgia. It's a fast pass rusher there that is literally going to just have a field day on that defense. So the Eagles, hats off to that draft.
It just makes too much sense. The Eagles are gonna have a good defense, like I was saying. They just they're gonna draft these guys, and they're gonna be good players, and you just kind of have to expect that. I love the pick. I wish he wasn't an Eagle, but God dang it, the Eagles are making it look easy out there.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. And then to finish off, the Kansas City Chiefs at pick 31 took the defensive end out of Kansas State. Oh man, his first name's Felix Anduke Ukamaza. I do not know how to say that name. I messed it up when I gave you my draft grade on him, and I told you about the prospect earlier.
And
Tanner, do you
Udike
want to take a stab at it?
Uzoma? I don't know.
There you go. You heard it. You heard it from Tanner. He's getting a physics degree, so it works.
It does.
I'll
That
back it
doesn't
up.
mean you're good at English. That's like the opposite.
I it was a jab at you. There you go. Then like I said, not a bad way. Jumping back to it, not a bad way to close out the first round. I had a late 2, early 3 on the player, but the Chiefs are picking for need, and guess what? The Chiefs don't have a lot of needs. So this is a guy that's going to come in, probably not even play a whole lot his first season, and still somehow be really productive and be really good on the Chiefs because the Chiefs draft really well. If they didn't, they wouldn't be one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth noting here. I don't know how true this rumor is, but I think what I heard was the Chiefs were trying to trade up to get Mozzie Smith, who the Cowboys took, and using this pick, they would have obviously traded up. And I don't know. I mean, the Chiefs like to pick these players at the end of like the first round, and then sign them for 4 years and then let them go. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure they just recently declined Clyde Edwards-Helaire's fifth round or fifth year option. In
Oh, I
that,
would with Pacheco coming in. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and that was in that was a I'm pretty sure he was at the end of the first round whenever they drafted him.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to be a similar situation unless he turns into an absolute star, just someone who's going to come in and make that defense better because they're spending 50 million a year on Mahomes.
Exactly. And you have to draft well
Yeah.
to be at the top of the league every year if you're paying your quarterback that much money and your tight end that much money. Like you have to. And
Yes.
yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you hit on it, the running back out of LSU. Like you can't bring him back. Pacheco came in and balled, and he was not a first round pick. And will Pacheco be with the Chiefs in 4 years? Probably not. You know
Probably
what I mean?
not.
Like the Chiefs. That's because they draft so well,
It's just
and they have
how
a
you
quarter.
have to do it if you have these big contracts.
Exactly, and that's why you're hoping. With the big contracts with their quarterbacks, you're really hoping that they hit in the draft, and all NFL fans are really hoping they hit in the draft. So it for the NFL draft talk. Tanner, you have anything else, or should we close this one off?
I mean, it's kind of up to you because there's one or two more segments that I would like to talk about, but we are at an hour and 40 minutes, so we could always just keep going. I'm good with talking, but the two segments that
All right.
that I want to talk about
What are your
are
segments?
the rest of the Cowboys draft picks because we could talk about them, see how they are, see how you valued them overall. And then the
Okay.
other segment we need to hit, which is big in the NFL news as of the first day of the draft, was Lamar Jackson's contract.
Okay, I'm gonna let you hit on Lamar Jackson's contract. I'm gonna pull up all the Dallas Cowboy picks to make sure I don't miss one.
Okay, that's fair. Um, Taking a little break from the draft, Lamar Jackson is now the highest average paid quarterback in the NFL, highest average paid player in the NFL. Jalen signed his 51 million average, and then Lamar jumped him with 52 million without an agent, and that's impressive. I honestly didn't see it coming uh, because I just don't know. It's hard to invest that much into a quarterback that you don't know about, that you might not have even brought back this season. Like there was rumors about him going to the Patriots. He wasn't all happy there, but it shows that they're investing in him. And I think the big thing about the situation, and I'm sure Chad, you're going to talk about it, but what other options do the Ravens have? The Ravens have built around Lamar Jackson the past 4 years, and they need to sign him, or else that team is going to go into major rebuild mode because that's their guy of the future. You have to put all your eggs in that basket because there's no other option. You know what I mean? And it's team
Exactly.
it's a running based team, run option based team based on Lamar Jackson. So if you don't sign Lamar Jackson, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to run that kind of scheme or offensive scheme. What do you have on it?
E- exactly. I think I couldn't have said it better myself, and I think that Ravens. You took Lamar Jackson at the end of the first round, and Harbaugh said that they were completely changing their offense before he had even stepped on the field because they had scouted him so much at Louisville.
Yeah,
So when you have a player that is as electric as Lamar Jackson is, I understand why you bring him back. You can't realistically tell me that there's going to be a better quarterback out there in that scheme for you because guess what? There's not.
nope.
There's not a better runner in the NFL than Lamar Jackson. I'm sorry. Like, I get it that Justin Fields is there. If you're watching on YouTube, Odin, my dog, is joining us too. Um,
He likes Lamar.
exactly. He's a big Lamar Jackson fan. Also a big tennis. His favorite sport is tennis. He just watches that ball go back and forth. But you have Lamar Jackson there with that ski. You can't not pay him. You can't not
Yeah,
pay him. And do I understand why they did it? Yes. Because if they don't, the whole front office is fired.
yeah,
And Harbaugh's gone too. Like it everybody loses their jobs if they don't pay Lamar. And Baltimore did a very smart thing. They let Lamar go everywhere. And they said, whatever you get, we're gonna match it or give you more because you're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If the Ravens realistically even had a smidgen of doubt not signing Lamar Jackson, they would not have let him go to other teams. But they did. They let him talk to anybody. And it is hard to argue because he was a former MVP. Lamar
Yes.
was a former MVP. It's hard to argue to not bring him back, and it's also hard to argue what he's done, maybe not specifically in the playoffs, record wise, since he's been there. There's no way you're not going to bring him back. There's
Yeah.
literally no way. That's
He
like
wins
not
games.
signing back Dak Prescott if you're the Cowboys. That's the exact
Exactly.
same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It just makes too much sense. And I think, like, in the situation, I mean, Lamar played it amazingly without an agent. I mean, he has all the leverage in this situation, right? It, what is the
He
GM going
knows
to
it.
do? Say no? Like you were saying, that the organization is canned at that point. Like, sorry, say goodbye to your quarterback. Say goodbye to the next like 4 years of any success. Like Lamar is your franchise, and it doesn't matter how much you have to pay him. The only thing that, like how much in terms of how much that I didn't like is how much he did get. 52 million a year. It's going to be hard to bring in other talent to help him and help you get to that next level and help you get a Super Bowl because 52 million, it's up there, man. It's pretty up there. Um, and I if it were me, I would have loved like a 45 million or like a 48 million, 49, somewhere in that, not most paid, but pretty up there. Just so you
Yeah.
could at least get a little bit more when it comes to cap space in the future. But they wanted to break the bank, and Lamar wanted to break the bank. He had all the leverage in the situation, and he got what he wanted. Good job. He got the bag, man.
Exactly. He got the bag, and he completely deserves it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's nothing that you can take away from Lamar watching these last 4 or 5 years he's been in the league. Like he's been absolutely incredible, and he is going to come back. And when he is on the field, he's a game wrecker. And if you do not have a quarterback spy on him, you do have a quarterback spy on that doesn't run like a 4.4. Probably going to get like 20 yards on you rushing. So
Yeah.
it's hard not to bring him back. The team would be, I don't want to say irrelevant, but pretty close to irrelevant
Yeah.
if they didn't have Lamar Jackson at
Absolutely.
the helm. Yeah, especially I mean that division's a tough division too, and that division's very young. Um, So you have to keep that quarterback there, and you have to keep a guy like Lamar against those defenses.
Hmm.
There's a reason Harbaugh already won a Super Bowl with Flacco.
Yeah.
He already won a Super Bowl with Flacco, and he completely changed his offense because he knows how hard that division is. You're going up against Steelers. You're going up against the freaking Cleveland Browns. You're going up against Miles Garrett. You're going up against T.J. Watt. Good luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
luck. And so you have to bring this guy back if you even want to compete. So, yeah, of course it was the most money, and guess what? It's the same thing that I said about Dak whenever he signed the contract. I wish you wouldn't have, but I totally understand why you did it. And the
Yes.
reason I say I wish you wouldn't have is because now as a fan, you have to get to the NFC East Championship. If you're a Ravens fan, Lamar has to get to the AFC Championship and or Super Bowl. Same thing with the Cowboys every single year if you have your quarterback being paid that much. That's what the Eagles with how they paid Jalen Hurts, how we talked about that. They now have to get that late in the playoffs every single time, and it kind of sucks as a fan, but at the same time it doesn't because this is generational wealth, and these players not only set themselves up, but they set their families and their families up,
Yeah.
and that is really freaking cool. That is really freaking cool to see, especially with a guy like Lamar Jackson and how hard he works and how much adversity he overcame when everybody tried to tell him he was a running back. Now, jumping to the Cowboys picks, I pulled up a CBS article here to make sure that I actually get the picks right.
I think I have the same one
From
up.
Garrett from Garrett Padell, so we'll give him some props there. But obviously, we already hit on the Dallas pick in the first round at pick 26 with Mozzie Smith. Then the oh man, yeah, I remember this draft now as soon as I'm reading these picks. Then at round 2, pick 58, you had the tight end out of Michigan. We're taking Michigan. Bring everybody from Michigan. Luke Schoonmaker. Okay. Just where to start here. So third round grade for me. Once again, there's a theme in Dallas's draft. They're taking a player around early. They do it every single round, aside from one player entire draft that they didn't take early, in my opinion. But once again, there was a run on tight ends in the second round, so I understand that the tight ends are probably not going to be there. But once again, there was some other tight ends on the board that I probably would have taken, but new offensive coordinator. I have to think that he has a hand in this pick, and I have to think that McCarthy has a hand at this pick because I don't think Luke Schoonmaker is a day one starter. I really don't. I really don't think he's a day one starter. I think that he needs some coaching to get him up there, but he is a package in terms of tight end. So he brings a little bit of run blocking ability, which Dalton Schultz didn't have a whole lot of run blocking ability, but he kind of has a little bit of the same amount there. I think Schoonmaker may have a little bit more in that area. I understand the athleticism, why they drafted him, but it was around early, but they drafted a need. And with their first 2 picks, they absolutely drafted their biggest positions of need. So that's my take on Schoonmaker. A little bit early. Same thing with Smith, a little bit early. I don't think they would have been there in the third, though. Or I don't think either player would have been there if they would have waited to get him. So I understand the picks.
Yeah, it's it, it's hard, as like you go first round, you get I think a really good player with a position of need, and then second round you get an okay player with a position of need. Obviously, it's the nature of the NFL draft, but it's it it's kind of hard. The only thing about this guy is he's like you said, he's not going to make a day. He probably won't be a day one starter. We could be wrong, but he's not the guy that's going to jump out at you and be like, oh, here you go. He's going to make these crazy catches that you're going to want him to make. He's not the flashy tight end, but I think he's gonna be a valuable part of the depth, the tight end depth room, and hopefully he can make a contribution. But the thing about it is that doesn't sound like a second round pick. That sounds like a third or a fourth round pick. You know what I mean? So
A run stopping defensive tackle doesn't really sound like a first round pick either.
yeah, well, I think a run stopping defensive tackle that is highly rated that high sounds like a first round pick. Especially if if on their board he was like 13 or 14, I think that's fine.
Well, shit. He was probably number 2, and Schoonmaker was probably number 3 on their board with the way they're drafting. I don't know. You know what I
I
mean?
think Dallas was set
I
in
think
their
it was
ways
early.
at this pick. Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
Schoonmaker. I think they were set in their mind. They're like, all right, second round we're taking a tight end no matter who's there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter, and they just picked the one they thought was best. I'm not a crazy big fan of the pick, but I will admit it's gonna be fun yelling "Schoon" whenever he does anything.
At the Cowboys games. Yeah, that is going to be an absolute blast. But yeah, once again, they drafted positions of need.
Yeah.
Those were the 2 positions of need that they needed the most, and they answered it in the first and second round. But like I said, a little bit early on those guys. And go to round 3, pick number 90. We got linebacker DeMarvin Overshawn out of Texas. Once again, same thing, round early. I really, really liked his tape, but I need to find the consistency. You're going to find that a lot with these players. That's
Yeah.
why players fall to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, because they don't have that consistent game. They need to develop it. Now, if there's a defensive coordinator in the league that can develop the player very, very fast, it is Dan Quinn. So I understand why they take DeMarvin Overshawn out of Texas here. But once again, I think it was around early.
I think I agree. I mean, the thing that I've seen with this guy is he's really, really raw, and that's what you're gonna notice about these prospects is Dan Quinn just likes them. I hate to say this, he likes them raw, and then he likes to mold them into whatever they can be in the NFL, and that's exactly what this guy is. I mean, he's athletic, and he can make tackles in the lateral parts of the field, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he can get outside the tackles and try and make big plays, but he's really raw, and that's pretty much my only knock on him. He just inconsistent, like you're saying, but that's why it's round 3, I guess. Maybe a little bit early, but I don't know. I think Dan Quinn's in that room, and he's like, I want that one, and they're like, okay. So
Yeah, I want
that's pretty much it.
give me that player, and you can't argue because every player that's brought over, he's developed into a pretty solid player. Look at Micah Parsons; he's arguably the best pass rusher in the league right
Exactly.
now, and
Exactly.
nobody thought that he was going to develop at that pace and or be that good. So if one of these 3 guys hit, awesome, then the draft works, right? If you get a two guys that signed second contracts out of the draft, realistically, that draft was a success. And
Yeah.
these 3 first rounds, I don't know if it's going to be a success.
I
It
don't
is
know.
the the Cowboys have the biggest question mark, in my opinion, in terms of draft, because a lot of these guys, like I said, were taken around early, but their tight ends are rated differently than our tight ends on our board. Same with the linebackers. You know, then in the 4th round, they go edge Valami Fakahu out of Jose State. I didn't have much on the player other than he needed to be more consistent. He was an athletic pass rusher. I want to say I gave him a fifth round grade. So once again, still taking it a little bit early, but 4th round picks, I look at that as being a potential starter, not within this season. I look at that as being hopefully a potential starter within next season. I don't know if he sees the field a whole lot this season.
Yeah.
I absolutely think he will come in on certain situations, on certain passing situations, and certain rushing situations as well. But I don't see him being a player that is an immediate impact player. I don't think it was a steal, but adding more defensive linemen for Dan Quinn to mold. So once again, I'm okay with the pick. I understand the pick, but I think it was around early, and I think same theme going along with the Cowboys draft. There were better prospects on the board, in my opinion.
Yeah. The thing that I've seen with this guy is they didn't draft him as a defensive end. They drafted him as a defensive tackle and a run stopping defensive tackle. That's what they're going to mold
Yeah.
him into. And the big thing that he showed in college at San Jose State was his ability to get tackles for loss. So that's what they want him to do here as probably a rotational guy. And maybe if he can step up to something bigger, they want to add him to that defensive line, specifically at the defensive tackle spot. And I like the pick. I think it's fun. At first I was like, "What? Why?" We already have edges, but learning the information that he's going to switch over to the inside and be a rotational guy, I like the pick. I think it makes sense. And they're again addressing a position of need. He's athletic and he can be molded into something that they can make.
Yeah, and jumping it a little scary that when you go from a defensive end to a defensive tackle in the NFL, it's a
Yeah,
little scary. He
it
did
will.
play in he did play inside at San Jose State sometimes too. I did see him line up in the gap when I did watch a couple of his games. Not a ton of games I watched by him, but the thing is, if you're getting drafted in the 4th round, I want you to wow me a little bit, and he didn't really wow me that much. But once again, if he gets consistent, I totally understand. And a run stopper, it's kind of hard to wow you, when you're
Of
sitting there
course.
watching tape because they're just running right into the line anyway. But I understand it. I understand the pick, and they're really really trying to address this run stopping need because, like Tanner said, it is the biggest need on their team. And they take first offensive lineman, which arguably was another big need, in the 5th round in their compensatory pick. So they take Asim Richards out of North Carolina in the fifth. I had a 6th round grade on this player. So once again, around early, I don't think he's going to come in and be a starter at all. I'm not sure he's going to. I mean, I think he makes. I don't know if he makes the roster. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We are it's arguably we do have a position of need there, but we also have some veterans that can step in. But the thing is, if the Cowboys draft a player in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round, they always stick around, whether it be the practice squad, whether it be somewhere else, and then they somehow make it on the team. Anthony Brown was a cornerback that Dallas drafted years ago, and he was a 6th round draft pick, and he started contributing quarter and signed a contract with the Cowboys. So Dallas in the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds don't necessarily follow the trend that a lot of teams do and don't have those players on the field. A lot of their 5th, 6th round, 7th round players are on the field, and that shows a really good draft and scouting department. I think the Cowboys are very good at hitting in the later part of the rounds. I think that a lot of these players I haven't seen a lot of tape on. I haven't seen more than 2 to 3 games on every single one of these players on the bottom. Once again, they pick need with their guys that were on the board, and I could see Asim Richards potentially being a swing tackle every now and then next season, but really, really learning the game, and then I don't see him coming in and being a replacement in the future. But hopefully, I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing the Cowboys saw with this guy is that they can move him to guard, and hopefully he can do something, right? It's not going to be an easy transition from tackle to guard, but maybe in like a year, maybe in two, he can be like that swing offensive lineman that you can just kind of plug and play because for one, played tackle in college, and two, played guard in the NFL, right? That's, I think, what they're wanting to do with him. And if he develops into a starting guard, awesome. You know what I mean? He's going to fill out that spot
Yeah,
nicely. Awesome.
it's a win. It's a win if he's a starter in the 5th round. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I like to pick. I think it makes sense, but in these later part of the rounds, you're just kind of just kind of fishing, and maybe you get something you like.
Exactly. And then, the sixth other 5th round pick, I forgot that was still the 5th round pick because the first 5th round pick we had was a compensatory pick. But the cornerback Eric Scott Jr. out of New Mexico. I mean, I don't know if he comes in and makes a team with the addition of like Stephon Gilmore. I think he makes the team for sure, but again, I think they're drafting on potential here. I mean, you absolutely are in the 5th round, right? You're drafting on potential, so they're drafting strictly on potential of this kid. I did watch 2 games from him. He stood out, but at the same time, he did get lost a little bit, and I think that's why he's getting drafted in the 5th. I think that sometimes he took his eye off the ball, and sometimes he got beat, and that was only in the couple games I saw. So that's kind of scary. Maybe those 2 games he didn't play that well, and I happened to pick his 2 worst games, but I understand why he was a 5th round pick by the Cowboys. I gave him, after watching those 2 games, I gave him a 6th round grade. Then I went and watched and looked up his numbers and everything. Nothing really stood out to me that was crazy number wise, but still, a fifth, sixth, 7th round, you're just hoping that those players are actually going to make the team. If they are even rotational guys, it's a win. I think that year one, if he sees the field, he's on special teams every now and then whenever the opposing team has 4 or 5 wide receivers on the field
Hmm.
in a stupid obvious passing situation. Maybe he comes in, but you need to draft as many corners as you possibly can, and the Cowboys only took one this draft, but we'll see how he pans out.
Yeah, the thing I've seen about this guy, and the first thing I'll say about him is he ran a 4.71 as a cornerback. And it's been said that he's was dealing with something at the time, so hopefully that's nothing of an issue, but it's really scary because that's not good at all. I've seen linebackers, specifically Micah Parsons, that can run faster than that. Obviously he's a
A
freak athlete,
lot,
but there's a lot
a
of
lot of
linebackers
players.
that can run
Yeah,
faster than that. And our defensive tackle that we drafted in the first round runs like a 4.8 or a 4.9. So it's like, what the heck, dude? But I think the reason they drafted him, and I'm going to compare him to a player that the Cowboys have already drafted, is Nashawn Wright a couple years ago or last year or wherever it was. But it's just Dan Quinn's typical cornerback that he likes to draft. He's these long,
exactly.
big arms, big arm span kind of guys. I think he was like he had one of the biggest arm spans in the draft, and that's the reason they drafted him. He's Nashawn Wright part two. Hopefully he doesn't end up like Nashawn Wright, but he may be a special teams contributor, and I don't know, maybe he can grow into something with some training, right? But that's pretty much
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Exactly. And then we have the 6th round pick, which was a compensatory pick. We had the running back from Kansas State, Deuce Vaughn. His dad is actually a scout for the Dallas Cowboys and got to call his son and asked him if he wanted to go to work with him next week. Is all over social media. It went viral. Really,
Yeah.
really cool video to see. Deuce Vaughn is the only player Cowboys drafted that I have that they actually drafted around early. I had a 4th, 5th round grade on Deuce Vaughn. I think that this kid does make the team, and I think that this kid is going to be in for a while. I think that Deuce Vaughn is a very good player out of Kansas State. Top 10 running back for me in this draft, and the fact that Dallas got him in the 6th round with a compensatory pick to me is Dallas's best pick of the draft. Just value off my board. Um, I don't necessarily think he was a top 100 player. But still a solid player, right? You're in the 6th round.
Hmm.
Realistically, 32 picks are going around. You're not going to be in the top 100 unless you're injury, like a very big injury or something very bad happened off the field. Deuce Vaughn had neither of those happen. He just slipped and fell all the way down to the 6th round, which fourth, fifth round running back, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like that makes sense that you're falling down in the sixth round. So I think that Dallas doesn't necessarily need a running back, but I love that they drafted a running back in the later rounds, and I love that it was his pop that got to call him and deliver the pick.
I think this is the story that stole the third day of the NFL draft. And you see, obviously you've heard of this player, but I freaking love this player. I love the pick. I think it's so awesome. And the Cowboys are finally doing it. And they haven't done it yet. And I don't know why, but they're doing it. They drafted a small, fast player that they can put anywhere on the field on the offense. They could put him anywhere. Kansas City is doing it with Pacheco. And it just makes too much sense, right? He's got speed. He's got burners. He looks if he was like 4 inches taller, he would be one of the best players in this draft because he just has that ability. A he just has a lot of abilities and he can make plays. I like the pick a lot, and it's an emotional
Well,
story.
he has the ability to hit the second gear.
Yeah, he can just
And a lot of
boom.
running backs don't have that second gear. You saw it. Ezekiel Elliott out of Ohio State with the first 40 years or first 3 years in Dallas had that second step.
Yeah,
Pollard has that second step. That second step goes away eventually with age. Deuce has got it. And give Deuce the rock, and Deuce is going to do some fun things with the ball. So what I really would want to see is I would want to see Deuce and Tony Pollard offsides of the quarterback. I want the quarterback in the middle,
yeah,
and both of them on the
yeah.
offsides of the quarterback, because then you could do a wheel route with one, maybe an inside route with the other one. I don't know if Deuce is going to see the field, in the
I don't
first
know.
season, right? He's
I don't know.
he's a 6th round pick, but it is a very fun prospect. And honestly, if Dallas would have taken him with their 4th or 5th round pick, I wouldn't have been mad.
Yeah, I mean the
So
kid is like 5'6". I just looked it up. He's tiny, but he's basically like Tariq Cohen. He's fast and he makes those
yeah,
plays.
Darren Sproles.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Like I love the pick. I think it's so much fun, and I really think you're gonna see him on the field his rookie season.
Let's hope so. Then to finish out the draft at pick 244 in the 7th round, Dallas takes the wide receiver out of South Carolina, Jalen Brooks. I'm going to be honest. I only watched him because I happened to watch a couple South Carolina games this season for college football and didn't notice a whole lot. I'll see makes the team. I did see some flashes. The numbers didn't stand out, but they weren't bad at the same time. South Carolina wasn't the best passing school in the SEC. He got bottled up. What I have about him is he got bottled up a lot. He needs to separate more. He needs to be more consistent. And we'll see if he makes the team. If he does, I could see it as a special teams
Hmm.
contributor, and or potentially a Noah Brown that Dallas had. That 6th, 7th round player that comes back every year somehow, and one game out of the season somehow contributes. I don't see him being more than that. I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. It's at this point in the draft where you pick players that you don't want to hit the undrafted free agency market, right? Like this is like okay, this is our last chance to get a guy that we really like, that we have a high-ish on our board, and that's what they did here. I don't really know a lot about him, but he's one of those bigger receivers, and he's gonna go up and get the ball, kind of like how Michael Gallup does right now. So hopefully he can be a special teams contributor. I expect like nothing more than that. I really don't expect to see him in the field for offense. If he makes it that far, awesome. You know what I mean? But there's really no expectation there.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there was one back. I don't remember his name, and I don't want to just sit here live or recording and try to find it. But Dallas got the best fullback in the draft. In the next day after the draft, where they signed unsigned free agents, or draft players. So they got the best fullback in the draft. That was one that I'm glad you brought this up, Tanner, because I
Hmm.
definitely wanted to hit on him. A lot of teams don't even necessarily use a fullback in the system, but Dallas is now going to new offensive coordinator. They're bringing back that fullback. I can't, like I said, I can't remember his name, but really solid player there is a fullback. It's kind of hard to watch tape. You know what I mean? You kind of know what the player is going to do every single time.
Yeah.
But really, really good pick there. Draft. So
His
that's all I got for Cowboys talk.
his name is Hunter Lupka.
That's it.
Lupke. I don't know how to say his last name, but they
Yeah,
signed
that's
him.
it.
That's awesome. It's obvious the Cowboys want to run the ball, and I like that. I'm a
Yeah,
fan.
and you need to give more help to more protection to Tony Pollard too
Yep.
because he's coming off that injury. So great pick. I absolutely think he will be part of the 53-man roster. I think he easily is our starting fullback for the future, and I think we probably fullbacks. I don't think get paid a ton of money, but if he's anywhere close to what I think he's going to be, I mean, fullback, it's hard to be outside of the fifth, sixth, seventh round just because there hasn't been a lot of fullbacks. You've had Patrick Ricard, who's been a fullback that has been incredible every year for the last 18th years. But realistically, the NFL doesn't have even fullbacks on certain teams, right? So the position is not only devalued, it's very devalued. So for us to get the number one back, I'll take it as a win. And I think it's a really good pickup that Dallas did right after the draft. So that wraps up another episode. Next week we're going to be chatting, more NHL, NBA playoffs, and I went and graded every draft, every team. So I gave every team a draft grade. Tanner is probably going to fight me on most of them, so it's going to be a really fun episode. But Tanner, let's do it again next week.
Yeah, it was fun.